Chapter 1600. Of course, before Long Yu went to the Soul Race's territory, he had to reach the peak of the 7th phase Dominator. Only then would he have the strongest combat power and the best guarantee of survival. Otherwise, if he really encountered some extreme situations, he might still be in trouble. Right now, his 9 Underworld Spheres power had been increased by 2 times, and the effect of slowing down the flow of time had been increased by more than 3 times. If he stayed in the area where the flow of time was slowed down, he would only need a month to absorb the power of creation and break through to the 7th phase Dominator. This was because a month in the outside world was equivalent to 3 months of cultivation. It was more than enough for him to consolidate his current cultivation as a 6th phase Dominator. The higher the Dominator realm, the more time was needed to consolidate. When he was a 3rd or 4th rank Dominator, he would only need 1 or 2 months to consolidate his cultivation. But now, he would need at least 3 months. If he forcefully increased his cultivation before then, the increase in his basic strength would be limited. It wasn't a good idea. Fortunately, a month was still enough for Long Yu to wait. He could also see if the Divine Water Race, Silverstone Race, and Soul Race had any new moves. When their respective Dominator armies were completely annihilated, with none of them able to escape, what would they do? Long Yu was actually quite looking forward to the 3 alien races sending out demigods. That would be a real battle between experts. Moreover, if the demigod experts were to be swallowed, what kind of changes would occur to the Ball of 9 Nether? Long Yu did not know, so he was looking forward to it. However, even for alien races such as the Silverstone Race, the Divine Water Race, and the Soul Race, demigods were not something that could be used casually. Even if the Dominator Legion was annihilated, demigod experts might not be sent out. As for what the other party would do, Long Yu did not know. Therefore, it was good to stay in the Void Galaxy for a month, lest something happened as soon as he left. If that happened, the situation would not be good. He returned to the mini-world and continued to the core space of the 3rd level of the 9 Abyss Prison Steel. He activated the Ball of 9 Abyss and slowed down the flow of time in the area. He also simulated the appearance of the Dragon Emperor of 9 Abyss and continued to comprehend the 4-aspect Deadly Prison. He hoped that he could cultivate the 4-aspect Deadly Prison to the Minor Realm. Of course, this was not an easy task, but there was nothing else important now. If he wanted to comprehend the Hell-shaking Divine Rune, Golden Flame God Force, and so on, he was prepared to wait until he obtained the Divine Connection Wine. He could just drink the Divine Connection Wine. There was no need to waste too much time on it. He just didn't know if the soul-connecting wine would be helpful in comprehending the Golden Flame Divine Power. This was something Long Yu did not know. After all, the Golden Flame Divine Power was a power controlled by the gods. Apart from a time when he transformed into the Golden Flame Giant, he had never tried it again. He was in the form of a black dragon, the Joyo Dragon Emperor, hovering in the middle of the 3rd level of the 9 Hells Steel. He was surrounded by 4 ancient palaces, all of which had been upgraded to unbounded grade battle weapons. In fact, Shi Yingwu and the others had all improved significantly. Yellow Springs Divine Rune, Hell Divine Rune, Azura Divine Rune, and Death Divine Rune. Not only had the 4 of them comprehended their respective divine runes, but they had also started to comprehend the other 3. If they could comprehend all of them, it would undoubtedly be a great boost to their strength. Perhaps they could even use the 4 aspects Killing Prison, a forbidden skill of the ancient gods. Unfortunately, apart from Long Yu himself, the others could not enjoy the effect of the 9 Hells Spheres' slowing of the flow of time. Because if the others were in this area, the slowing of the flow of time would also affect them. The circulation of energy in their body, the execution of skills, and so on, everything would be affected. Compared to Long Yu, their speed would be reduced by 70%, but to the outside world, their speed would still be the same. Even if Long Yu wanted to restrict the 9 Hell Sphere so that it would not affect Shi Yingwu and the others, there was nothing he could do. The 9 Hell Sphere was not completely under Long Yu's control, especially the effect of the slowing of the flow of time. Besides Long Yu, everyone else would be slowed down. As a result, apart from Long Yu himself, No one else was able to use this method to speed up their cultivation. It was a pity. Long Yu was rather puzzled. Otherwise, he could have made the entire Void Galaxy grow 3 times stronger at the same time. However, it was already very good that the Nine Hells sphere could affect the flow of time. Long Yu could not be so unsatisfied. In any case, he could cultivate in the area where the flow of time was slowed down as if he was unaffected. Thus, his cultivation speed would increase by 3 times compared to the outside world. In such a state, his cultivation speed would greatly increase. In addition, Long Yu had transformed into the Jiuyo Dragon Emperor. Thus, when he comprehended various techniques or powers related to the Jiuyo Dragon Emperor, his cultivation speed would increase to a certain extent. The 4 aspects deadly prison was not fully comprehended by the Jiuyo Dragon Emperor in the past. However, he definitely comprehended it to the great accomplishment. The Jiuyo Dragon Emperor must have entered the core space of the 4th layer of the Nine Hells prison tablet. Therefore, when he transformed into the Jiuyo Dragon Emperor, Long Yu could get close to the Jiuyo Dragon Emperor's comprehension in a certain aspect, which allowed him to comprehend the 4 aspects deadly prison faster. A month passed by quickly in the outside world. As for Long Yu, he had already been cultivating for 3 months. During this period of time, he had gained quite a lot. Although the 4 aspects deadly prison was still very far from a minor accomplishment stage, it allowed him to comprehend a lot more about this forbidden technique of the ancient gods. The destructive power that he could unleash was at least 50% stronger than before. The current Long Yu, whether it was the 4 aspects deadly prison or the dark flame ghost chains, were both extremely powerful techniques. However, the dark flame ghost chains were most likely not enough to deal with a demigod realm expert. He could only use the 4 aspects deadly prison and combine it with the jade branding mark and the martial arts secret technique of the Spring of Shadows. The dark flame ghost chains could deal with ordinary alien races, but it wouldn't be very effective against demigods unless he could step into the demigod realm. In that case, he would be able to unleash the power of the dark flame ghost chains to the fullest and win against demigods easily. My cultivation has finally been consolidated. Let's raise it to the 7th phase Great Ruler first. At this time, Long Yu had first grade Heaven Crystal rank and transcendent grade creation items on him. He didn't lack creation items at all. Therefore, after he felt that his cultivation had been completely consolidated, he immediately started absorbing these creation items. As the power of creation continuously surged into his dantian, it circulated throughout his body, allowing his small world to continuously expand. Finally, after a muffled sound came from his entire body, Long Yu's martial arts realm had stepped into the 7th phase Great Ruler level. This was the peak of the ruler's secret realm. One more step, and he would be in existence of the demigod level. There was still quite a distance for Long Yu to reach the demigod level. It wasn't because of a bottleneck like others, but because the time needed to consolidate the cultivation of the 7th phase Great Ruler level was slightly longer than before. Some people even needed as long as several years. Generally speaking, a few years to consolidate the cultivation of the 7th phase Great Ruler level wasn't considered much. After all, most cultivators would maintain the 7th phase Great Ruler level for hundreds of years, or even their entire lives. But for Long Yu, this period of time was a little too long. After all, he didn't have a bottleneck. As long as he finished consolidating his cultivation, he could increase his realm. However, consolidating his cultivation was a must. Otherwise, Long Yu felt that even if he stepped into the demigod level, his power density wouldn't reach 10 times that of ordinary cultivators. This was the same as before. If he increased his cultivation too early and his cultivation wasn't stable enough, then the increase in his basic power would be slightly less than others. It was the same for advancing from the 7th phase Great Ruler to the demigod level. If he didn't consolidate it well, then his power density would be much weaker than others. This was something that Long Yu couldn't tolerate. After all, up until now, he didn't know any other way to increase his power density other than divine pills. Therefore, even if it was only a 10th less, Long Yu wasn't willing to see it happen. In any case, the current him already had a certain level of resistance against demigod experts. There was no need for him to pursue speed. Just as Long Yu officially stepped into the peak of the 7th-stage sovereign realm, another piece of news came from outside the starry sky. This time, it was the second time that the Divine Water Tribe, the Silverstone Tribe, and the Soul Tribe had joined forces. This time, they didn't split up. Instead, they gathered together and sent out 3 ruler legions. In total, there were 9 ruler legions led by 3 demigod experts. This time, the 3 clans joined forces. It was at least 10 times more difficult to deal with than before. Most importantly, there were 3 demigods participating in the battle. This was a little tricky. It had to be said that after stepping into the demigod level, Consort Yu was finally going to face a real battle. The young girl Ji Tao controlled the black dragon body of the Jiuyou Dragon Emperor and would also participate in this battle. The stone statue of the multi-winged tribe, controlled by Consort Yu, also had to participate in this battle. This battle basically required the Void Galaxy to fight with all its strength, leaving no room for maneuver. If they couldn't repel the enemy, then even with the Divine Spirit boundary, it would be broken by the enemy sooner or later. When that happened, the entire Void Galaxy would be in a terrible situation. Now that the enemy had only sent out 1 demigod each, they had to give them a head-on blow and let them know how powerful they were. If they wanted to gain a foothold in this galaxy, they had to let the enemy know that the Void Galaxy had the power to cause them heavy losses. Naturally, Long Yu couldn't leave the Void Galaxy at this time. Of course, he had to participate in the battle. Moreover, he was looking forward to seeing how many living beings the Ball of 9 Serenities could devour in this battle. That was an army of 90,000 ruler legions and 3 demigods of the foreign races. This made Long Yu very excited. What made him even more surprised was that when the news of the demigod attack came, another demigod expert was finally born in the Void Galaxy. Chapter 1601. Long Yu had never asked who Consort Yu's ultimate item of creation was given to, but now he finally knew. When the demigods of the 3 races arrived with the 9 legions of dominators, a burst of lightning burst out of the galaxy and flashed in every inch of the galaxy, attracting everyone's attention. It was in a cluster of buildings in the galaxy where Chihua, Man Xian, and the others lived. From this group of buildings, the color of thunder and lightning dyed the entire sky. It was as if the god of thunder had descended to the world. Within the resplendent thunder and lightning, a delicate figure slowly walked out. This person was someone that Long Yu had never expected. Easy Way. On the woman's smooth forehead, there was still the shocking primordial thunder seal, which sounded like the explosion of the divine thunder at the beginning of the world. Her purple hair was fluttering behind her, and lightning was overflowing. She had become a demigod. It's her. Long Yu didn't expect that Consort Yu had given the ultimate item of creation to Easy Way. It reminded him of the scene he saw in the deepest part of the eroding moon ancient region. He couldn't figure out what was going on with the young man who looked like him in Easy Way. Therefore, he had a different feeling about Easy Way. Easy Way controlled the primordial thunder. The moment she became a demigod, the density of her power was 10 times higher than that of regular cultivators. She walked out of the lightning and saw Long Yu, who was waiting for her. Then, she saw Consort Yu, Jiuyou Dragon Emperor, and the demigod statue of the multi-winged race flashing in the distance. She couldn't help but curl her lips. I made it. Easy Way walked to them. Congratulations. Long Yu was overjoyed. He smiled and walked to her. We can fight against the aliens together. The body of the 9 underworlds dragon controlled by Ji Tao hovered in the void, faintly giving off the aura of the 9 underworlds. Over the past few days, Ji Tao had also unlocked some of the shackles in the body of the 9 underworlds. She could use most of Dragon Emperor Jiuyou's original power, including the power of 2 Eternal Darkness attribute divine characters. Unfortunately, she couldn't do anything in terms of martial techniques and divine abilities. Fortunately, Long Yu taught her a divine martial art technique, which was gathering aura. Now that she had reached the peak level of gathering aura, her comprehension ability was definitely beyond that of regular cultivators. "How is it?" Surprised? "Consort, you came to Long Yu," and chuckled. "I gave her the ultimate item of creation because I felt she would be the fastest to become a demigod. As for the others, we can only make way for her." What a pleasant surprise. Long Yu shook his head with a smile. He kept thinking about the scene he saw on the 6th level of the Eclipse Moon Ancient region, the young man who looked like him and Yi Wei. He was a bit hesitant. Yi Wei took a step forward and lightly flicked her purple hair that was fluttering behind her back. Her pair of intelligent eyes stared at Long Yu. "Big brother Long, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking at me with such a strange expression?" Long Yu came back to himself and scratched his head in embarrassment. "Nothing. Let's go." He put this matter aside for the time being. No matter what would happen to him and Yi Wei in the future, they were just friends now. As for what would happen in the future, it was useless to think about it now. Yi Wei felt a bit strange, but she didn't take it to heart. In fact, even she didn't expect that she would step into the demigod level so quickly. The key was that she had been training hard all the time, and the ultimate item of creation that Consort you gave her played a role in promoting her. If it weren't for the ultimate item of creation, it would have taken her at least a few more years to reach the demigod level. And that was when she did her best in everything. Generally speaking, she could only reach the demigod level after the next opening of the Eclipse Moon Ancient region, which was 20 years later. For demigods and Long Yu, who far surpassed all the great dominators, finally took action. Not just them. When the 3 alien demigods arrived with the 9 legions of dominators, the entire galaxy was mobilized. The Grizzly Bear Monstrous Clan, the Immortal Fox Monstrous Clan, the Blood Monstrous Clan, and the White Feather Monstrous Clan, the 4 armies of rulers, moved out together. Sunset Dance, Shu Chan, Yin Huanma, and Duguijian also brought their respective ancient palaces and followed Long Yu into battle. This battle was the most critical one since the beginning of the development of the galaxy. The situation was extremely grave. It must be noted that they were faced with alien demigods. Over the years, it was unlikely that they would run into demigod aliens at the border of the territory of human beings and demons. Only on rare occasions would there be a head-on confrontation between demigods. But right now, the galaxy was under the joint attack of 3 alien demigods. That was because, although the galaxy was strong before, it didn't show the strength of the demigod level, so the 3 alien demigods didn't regard the galaxy as a real opponent. They wanted to wipe out all the forces in the galaxy with the 3 alien demigods. It was a pity that this time, Long Yu wanted to let the 3 alien demigods know that the galaxy was not something they could mess with at the moment. If they wanted to wipe out the galaxy, they would have to at least kill a lot of demigod experts. This would make them reconsider attacking the Void Galaxy. Everybody gathered in the cosmos and marched out of the cosmos, ready to fight the 3 alien demigods and the 9 alien legions head-on. This was Long Yu's arrangement. Consort Yu would fight the demigod of the Soul race by herself. Ji Tao would fight the demigod of the Silverstone race by herself. The demigod of the Water race would be dealt with by Yi Wei, the new demigod, and the demigod statue of the multi-winged race. It wasn't a big problem to deal with 3 demigods in this way. Of course, it was still very difficult to kill them. They would have to wait for Long Yu to take action. One had to admit that the existence of the Jade branding mark doubled the peak combat power of the Void Galaxy. After all, the effect of the star branding mark was to weaken the opponent's power density, not to increase Long Yu's own power density. In other words, Long Yu could totally weaken the opponent's power density to 5 times that of a regular cultivator, or half. Then, he could let Consort Yu and the others use their ultimate moves, which would definitely be enough to crush the opponent. Of course, Long Yu couldn't help them at first, because the 3 alien demigods had brought 3 legions of dominators with them. This was a total of 9 legions of dominators, and Long Yu had to take care of them first. Long Yu's duty was to first get rid of this army of 90,000 people, then join the battle against demigods. At that time, his sphere of 9 hells would have devoured enough foreign race corpses, and it would definitely become even stronger. In the battle against demigods, it would also play a greater role. Then, let's go. Long Yu gave the order, and then he and Concubine Yu used the God Relic Shard to activate the God Relic enchantment, allowing everyone to fly out of the starry sky and meet the onslaught of the outsiders. Long Yu still had 88 Ghost Shadow Tribe experts with him. However, this time, there were 4 more people. They were Sunset Dance and the other 3 Ghost Shadow Tribe experts. In this battle, these 4 people would be an indispensable part of the battle. Long Yu turned into nothingness and directly teleported to where the opponent was. Apart from demigods, there were only a handful of people who could see the Book of Shadows turning into nothingness. Up until now, Long Yu had only encountered a situation where he was seen through by a cultivator below the demigod level, and that was that silver 6-winged creature. And that silver 6-winged creature had already been killed by him. He kept traveling through the void. Consort Yu, Yi Wei, and Ji Tao also followed closely with the demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race. The other 4 legions of dominators of the demon race, on the other hand, were a bit slower and couldn't keep up, but this wasn't a big problem. Originally, in this battle, the legions of dominators of the 4 demon races were only there to restrain the enemy. There was no need for them to participate in the fierce battle. After exiting the Void Galaxy, the armies of the 4 great demon clans spread out in all directions. Their main task was to set up an inescapable net around the area, so that the foreign races would not be able to escape if they wanted to. This was because the following battle would definitely be very intense, so intense that the alien legions of dominators couldn't see any hope. Long Yu could single-handedly wipe out an army of 10,000 rulers. How could the other legions of dominators not want to escape when such a scene appeared? In the distant void, the phalanx of the Divine Water race, the Silverstone race, and the Soul race soon appeared in front of Long Yu and Consort Yu's eyes. They were led by 3 powerful demigods of the alien race. Among them, the Soul race was an existence that couldn't be seen with the naked eye, but with their spiritual senses, they could easily detect the existence of the demigod expert of the Soul race. The demigod of the Silverstone race was huge. As he moved forward in the void, he was like a small star. He carried a huge silverstone hammer in his hand. This silverstone hammer probably only needed to hit once to completely shatter some stars. It was extremely powerful. The demigod of the Divine Water race, on the other hand, had completely turned into a huge wave. He was like a puddle of liquid as he moved forward in the void. He looked much stronger than the other members of the Divine Water race. The huge gray wave rolled through the void, bringing with it waves of spatial divine characters as if it was going to shake the space. Prepare for battle. Ziwei, be careful. After all, you've just become a demigod and haven't even familiarized yourself with your power. Just let the stone statue take your place for a while. Consort Yu reminded Yi Ziwei. After all, the demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race was just a stone statue. Even if it was destroyed, it wouldn't be a big problem. The key was that nothing could happen to Yi Ziwei. Okay, Yi Ziwei didn't act willfully. Instead, she nodded solemnly. She knew that she hadn't completely grasped the power of a demigod yet. Moreover, she didn't seem like a demigod who had advanced in the eroding moon ancient domain and only relied on a supreme-grade creation item to forcibly deify a technique. The other party was very likely a demigod expert who had deified several techniques. Chapter 1602. Consort Yu faced the demigod expert of the Soul race first. Since the Soul race didn't have a physical body, they were at the forefront of the 3 races that had come to attack the galaxy. Because of that, Consort Yu went up first and stopped the demigod of the Soul race. Otherwise, if the demigod of the Soul race attacked, it was very likely that it would cause a lot of trouble for everyone. If the demigod of the Soul race charged directly into the army of dominators in the galaxy, he would probably be able to wipe out the army of 10,000 dominators in a short time, just like Long Yu. That was a real demigod. Even Long, you could barely fight against a demigod right now, and that was only his own guess. The real situation was still unknown. The black and white divine energy on Consort Yu's body condensed and instantly turned into two long rivers of power, one black and one white. They pierced through the galaxy in an instant and flowed through the void like two long dragons, one black and one white. They intersected in front of the demigod of the soul race and formed a black and white cage. This black and white cage was one of the divinized techniques that Consort Yu possessed. At this moment, when it was performed, it immediately attracted the spiritual energy in the surroundings. The void seemed to be filled with a terrifying aura that was a mixture of immortals and demons. The spiritual body of the demigod of the soul race was trapped in the black and white cage. However, in the next moment, an invisible mental storm burst out of the black and white cage. Like a tornado, it broke through the black and white cage from one direction and enveloped the vicinity of Consort Yu. The mental storm descended from the sky, and an indescribable sense of urgency made Consort Yu feel great pressure. After she stepped into the demigod realm, she had rarely fought against demigod experts. Apart from fighting against those new demigods of alien races in the eroding Moon Ancient region when she was a new demigod, she had only fought against the demigod stone statues of the multi-winged race. But now, she was facing a powerful soul race member who had already become a demigod. The black and white immortal and demonic energies formed a circle around her. This circle was filled with immortal and demonic energy. Consort Yu's two immortal and demonic energies were both revelation-grade divine characters, and they complemented each other. It was just like the Ice-Fire clan that Long Yu had seen before. It could explode with power similar to immemorial divine characters. Black and white intertwined, and the entire starry sky seemed to be reversed along with this black and white. Immortal Demon Reversal. Consort Yu performed another divinized technique. She raised her hand, and the air of deities and devils turned the sky upside down, completely absorbing the incoming mental storm. Then, she released it again and launched a counterattack at the demigod of the soul race. It was a 100% rebound effect. In the past, this innate technique was completely useless to Consort Yu. But after becoming a divinized technique, the rebound effect reached 100%, and it was countless times stronger than before. If the mental storm of the demigod of the soul race was used against Long Yu, then even if Long Yu activated the world-cleansing soul mirror, he would not be able to rebound it 10 times, and he would even suffer damage to his soul. However, Consort Yu's immortal demon reversal completely reflected it back. This also allowed her to finally stall the demigod of the soul race. Then, she took out a beginner-level modified divine source item from her small world. This divine source item was given to her by Long Yu after he came out of the eroding Moon Ancient region. Compared to the weak power of Long Yu's Dark Flame Ghost Chains, even if Consort Yu only used this beginner-level modified divine source item, it would be much stronger than Long Yu's Dark Flame Ghost Chains. This was a snow-white mountain mark, and it was called the Seal of the Immortal Mountain. At this moment, after being activated by Consort Yu, the Seal of the Immortal Mountain was like a huge snow mountain. It descended from the sky and enveloped the soul race member with endless divine aura. Endless snow-white divine aura condensed the nearby space into a domain of ice and snow. Only a divine source item in the hands of a demigod was a true divine source item. Long Yu was fascinated by this scene. If he could step into the demigod realm, what kind of power would the Dark Flame Ghost Chain have? A high-level modified divine source item was at least 10 times more powerful than a beginner-level one. This Seal of the Immortal Mountain was already so powerful, let alone his Dark Flame Ghost Chains. After Consort Yu stopped the demigod of the soul race, the demigod of the Silver Stone race charged forward. This was a giant silver-colored stone golem dragging a giant stone hammer. It was like a giant star walking in the void. It was probably comparable to some small stars. Under the control of the girl's remnant soul, The body of the dragon of 9 underworlds sped toward the demigod of the Silverstone race that was the size of a star. As it sped, the body of the dragon of 9 underworlds rapidly grew. In the end, it became as terrifying as the demigod of the Silverstone race, reaching a length of 30,000 meters. The physical body of the Juyo Dragon Emperor did not belong to the human race or the demon race. It belonged to the dragon race. As for the dragon clan, they had long disappeared from this world. Now that such a powerful demigod dragon of 9 underworlds had suddenly appeared, the demigod of the Silverstone race immediately let out a surprised and angry roar. The Silverstone hammer that he had been dragging behind him suddenly smashed toward the dragon of 9 underworlds. The Silverstone race had no concept of the dragon race. This race had only risen to power recently. Although they could already establish a foothold in this area, they did not have much research on many ancient races. Although the overall strength of the human race and the demon race was not strong, they had a long history, and heritage. There was also some connection between the dragon race and the dragon race. Therefore, the Silverstone race did not have much reaction to the appearance of the dragon of 9 underworlds. They only felt that it was a race that they had never seen before, so they were a little wary. The huge Silverstone hammer traversed the void with great force. It was about to smash the center of the dragon of 9 underworld body. But it was also at this moment that the dragon of 9 underworlds roared. An eternal shadow, attribute, divine, character whizzed out of its body. It was as if the souls of the 9 underworlds had gathered on the body of the dragon of 9 underworlds, forming a domain surrounded by layers of souls. The huge Silverstone hammer smashed on the domain of souls of the 9 underworlds, but it was actually bound by the endless souls of the 9 underworlds and could not move an inch. The 9 Nether Ghost domain wasn't a divine ability or martial skill. It was just an additional effect of the eternal grade shadow attribute divine rune. From this, one could see how terrifying the power of the eternal grade shadow attribute divine rune was. If Long Yu's guess was correct, he should be able to see the eternal grade shadow attribute divine rune in the 4th layer of the 9 Nether Prison Tablet. The power of the eternal shadow attribute divine character was already the strongest existence apart from the power of gods. But now, the power of the eternal shadow attribute that the Juyo Dragon Emperor controlled by Ji Tao was actually stronger than that of ordinary demigods. It was even more than double that of ordinary demigods. This was also the reason why Ji Tao could temporarily suppress the opponent, even if she did not use any divine ability or martial technique. But the next moment, the huge demigod of the Silverstone race emitted a kind of intimidating silver light like a god descending to the mortal world, which illuminated the entire void. The huge Silverstone hammer in his hand also emitted a kind of silver light. This was the divine ability of the demigod of the Silverstone race. After the intimidating silver light covered his whole body, the body of the demigod of the Silverstone race became even tougher, and the density of his power instantly increased by 30 to 40%. Although it was still not as strong as the dragon of the 9 underworlds, it had already narrowed the gap between them. Then, the demigod of the Silverstone race directly activated an unending level martial technique, and it turned out to be a supreme unending level martial technique, which was even more powerful than the boundless grasp and the fighting heavenly body that Long Yu practiced. This supreme, unending level martial technique could even be counted as a divine martial technique. For the demigod of the Silverstone race, it was a very strong skill. As soon as this technique was used, the silver light on the Silverstone race's body became even brighter. His entire body was like a silver star that instantly exploded in the void. Countless cracked Silverstone pillars attacked the dragon of the 9 underworlds from all directions. The girl's dragon body leaped into the air. Immediately, another eternal grade shadow type divine text swept out. It was like a shadow storm. Anything that came into contact with this shadow storm, including the void, was sliced into pieces. The Silverstone pillars released by the Silverstone race were also cut into pieces, losing all their power. The two kinds of eternal shadow attribute divine characters, together with the high density of power that the Juyo Dragon Emperor had already cultivated, allowed the girl Jitao to fight against the strong demigod of the Silverstone race, without being at a disadvantage for a short time. Then, the demigod of the Divine Water race surged over like a gray wave in the void. Carrying the demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race, Yi Ziwei bravely went up. The demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race was the first to encounter the demigod of the Divine Water race. Before any power came out of the stone statue, it was swallowed by the demigod of the Divine Water race. The demigod of the Divine Water race was a liquid life form in the first place. At this moment, it even enveloped the demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race. One could feel that there was an extremely strong corrosive power in its body, which quickly corroded the demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race. However, the stone statue would not be so weak. Otherwise, the remnant soul of the girl Jitao wouldn't have to spend so much effort to suppress it. As if sensing the situation, Consort Yu, who was fighting the demigod of the soul race, raised her hand, and the demonic aura instantly burst out, activating the power that she had left in the demigod stone statue. In the next moment, not only did the demonic aura burst out of the stone statue, but also the power of the multi-winged race that belonged to the ancient stone statue condensed into a hurricane and broke through the liquid body of the demigod of the Divine Water race. The demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race broke out. In the next moment, countless yellow sand appeared from the void and covered the sky, as if the end of the world was coming. Chapter 1603. When the demigod statue of the multi-winged race fought against the demigod of the Divine Water race, Yi Ziwei was also prepared. It was not until this moment that the thunder mark of primordium on her forehead revealed its horrifying power. After she became a demigod, the power of the thunder mark of primordium had been increased by at least 10 times. Together with the increase in the density of the power, she was naturally much stronger than regular demigods. When the thunder seal of absolute beginning turned into rolling heavenly thunder that filled the entire void and swept toward the demigod of the Divine Water race, the demigod of the Divine Water race immediately became solemn. He even temporarily ignored the rolling sand of the demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race and chose to deal with the terrifying heavenly thunder first. The demigod of the Divine Water race directly condensed quite a few water arrows. After those water arrows, an enormous phantom of the Divine Water race was condensed in the void. That was the divinized technique of the Divine Water race. The phantom of God was the most obvious symbol of the divinized technique. At this moment, there were 7 demigods in the field, and all kinds of enormous phantoms appeared in the void. They were so magnificent that it was almost impossible for other people to approach within 100 kilometers of them. The legion of 90,000 demigods brought by the 3 alien demigods did not dare to approach the area where the demigods were fighting at all at this moment. They all stopped far away. "It's our turn." Long Yu curled his lips and reminded the people in the small world. Then, he directly rushed to the enemy's left wing, which was where the legion of 10,000 demigods of the Divine Water race was at. He did not turn into nothingness, because there were demigods in the field. Even if he turned into nothingness, the demigods would definitely be able to detect it. There was no need to waste any power. Long Yu flew over straightforwardly. Nobody followed him. The 4 demonic races, including the grizzly bear demon, could only choose to bypass the area where the demigods were fighting. It was impossible for them to directly pass through the center like Long Yu did. That was too bold. However, Long Yu trusted Consort Yu, Yi Ziwei, and Jitao very much. Since they had stopped the 3 alien demigods, they would not be distracted to deal with Long Yu. Even if they wanted to attack Long Yu could immediately fight back. He could at least reduce the density of the enemy's power by half, while ensuring his own safety. In that case, they would not be able to fight against Consort Yu and the others at all. Of course, The effect of reducing the density of power by half could only last for a short period of time, but it was definitely enough to put the enemy in a disadvantageous position during this period. Obviously, the three alien demigods did not bother to pay attention to a boy like Long Yu. After all, he only looked like a seventh phase great ruler on the surface. He couldn't pose any threat to them at all. So what if he could pass through the demigod battlefield? Did this human want to fight against the 9 alien races' legions by themselves? Long Yu took the lead, flying towards the sovereign army. The grizzly bear demon race and the other 4 demon sovereigns would take a detour from the side. They would probably be late by the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. After all, they were in the void, and the sovereigns were a large group. It was impossible for them to be as fast as Long Yu. When Long Yu arrived in front of the ruler army didn't pay much attention to him. In the direction of the divine water race's ruler legion, the legion of 10,000 rulers had only sent 3 7th phase great ruler rank vice legion commanders to stop Long Yu. They wanted to rely on their advantage in numbers to kill Long Yu in a 3-on-1 fight. However, the corners of Long Yu's mouth curled up slightly. He didn't take these 3 guys seriously at all. Since the other party had asked the 3 7th phase sovereigns to attack, then he would first get rid of them before anything else. Moreover, during this time, he released the 88 members of the Ghost Shadow tribe from the small world. These 88 people immediately sank into the void and disappeared without a trace from the divine water race's legion of sovereigns. At this time, Long Yu wasn't afraid that the demigods would complain about him. If he had flown over alone, the demigods would definitely have been able to warn him of his location. However, there were 88 members of the Ghost Shadow tribe. Even if the demigods could sense their presence, they couldn't possibly reveal their location to all the members of the divine water race's legion of sovereigns. As a result, the divine water race's army of 10,000 sovereigns only knew that there were close to 100 human experts scattered in different directions. No one knew where they went. To prevent a sneak attack, all the divine water race's sovereigns were on high alert. All kinds of defensive barriers were formed, forming an impregnable barrier. This made Long Yu smile. This was because the divine water race didn't know that the Ghost Shadow tribe was going to set up a prison ghost ceiling formation to stop them from escaping. The defensive barriers they formed now were completely useless. This was because these barriers couldn't withstand the dark flame ghost attacks. In the next moment, Long Yu raised his hand, and the 4 symbols killing prison was unleashed. After he had successfully learned the ancient god-forbidden technique, the speed at which he unleashed it had become extremely fast. The power of hell, yellow springs, azura, and death interweaved in the air, forming a hell of slaughter. For symbols killing prison, an ancient god-forbidden technique. Kill! Long Yu shouted in a low voice, and the 3 7th phase sovereigns charging at him were completely trapped by the 4 symbols killing prison. These 3 7th phase Dominator Divine Water Race members were a bit stronger than the patrol team they had encountered before. Their divine abilities were at least twice as powerful. However, Long Yu was much stronger than before. He had finally risen from the 6th phase Dominator realm to the 7th phase Dominator realm. Therefore, the 4 symbols killing prison was unleashed, and the aura of death enveloped the entire area, instantly swallowing the 3 7th phase sovereigns. This was a feast of death. Without any suspense, Long Yu raised his hand, and the 4 symbols killing prison was unleashed. In a short span of 3 breaths, the 3 7th phase sovereigns were completely annihilated. Even Long Yu's 9 underworld sphere was unable to devour them. Under the 4 symbols killing prison, the 3 7th phase sovereigns didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. They were completely annihilated. Not only were their minds and souls destroyed, but even their physical bodies were completely destroyed. Not even a speck of dust was left behind. Long Yu didn't stop. When he unleashed the 4 symbols killing prison, he didn't bother with the 3 7th phase sovereigns. Instead, he activated the Dark Flame Ghost. There was a total of 90,000 sovereigns. Long Yu had to quickly kill them all. Otherwise, there might be some problems in fighting against demigods. Even for Long Yu, it wasn't a simple matter to destroy a 90,000 sovereigns. He could easily annihilate a single one of them. Or rather, if the opposing army came one by one, no matter how many there were, he could annihilate them. However, if the opposing army of 9 sovereigns attacked him together, he would not be able to withstand it no matter what. No matter how powerful the Dark Flame Ghost was, it could only kill 1 foreign sovereigns in a short amount of time. A second one would pose a threat to Longyu. At this moment, the foreign sovereigns were completely defenseless. When the Dark Flame Ghost appeared, it was like a dragon burning with pitch-black flames. It instantly enveloped the divine water ray sovereigns who had formed a defensive barrier. At the same time, the Hell Ghost Ceiling Formation was activated. A translucent, weeping ghost formation surrounded the divine water race's army of sovereigns. The Dark Flame Ghost easily passed through the formation and wreaked havoc in the enemy's formation. The defensive barrier that had been set up to defend against the Ghost Shadow tribe didn't even have the slightest bit of resistance before the Dark Flame Ghost. It was completely destroyed. The divine water ray sovereigns had lost over 1,000 members in the blink of an eye, and they were dying at an extremely fast rate. The Dark Flame Ghost's terrifying power made it so that they couldn't even hold out for a single breath. The Dark Flame Ghost was like a ghost. With a light flick, it was enough to kill several dozen divine water ray sovereigns. Their minds and souls were destroyed and burned to nothingness by the Dark Flame divine runes. This scene was extremely familiar to many existences in the galaxy. They just didn't expect that Longyu would use it in front of demigods. He was simply too bold. In fact, when the 3 alien demigods sensed the power of the Dark Flame Ghost, they were all shocked from the bottom of their hearts. This was a high-grade modified divine source item. The 3 foreign demigods that attacked were all relatively weak among the demigods of their respective races. They didn't even have an ordinary divine source item, let alone a high-grade modified divine source item. They were immediately tempted when they saw such a terrifying weapon. In particular, the one who was holding this high-grade modified divine source item was only a 7th phase sovereign of the human race. He wasn't even a demigod yet. If they wanted to snatch it, wouldn't it be a piece of cake? Unfortunately, as soon as the 3 foreign demigods made a move, they were entangled by their respective opponents. Then, they took advantage of this opening and ruthlessly attacked them. The giant silver stone hammer in the hands of the Silverstone race demigod was sent flying. Then, it was caught in a net of endless, eternal-level divine runes and locked in the air. Then, the divine martial technique of condensing spirit light was activated. The power of the eternal-level shadow element. The density of the power that the Dragon of the 9 Nether cultivated was higher than that of regular demigods, and the peak-level godly martial technique that gathered spiritual light. The demigod expert of the Silverstone clan who was distracted was immediately dumbfounded when he performed the move. It was too late for him to use his power to defend himself. Chapter 1604. A pitch-black eternity divine rune light tore through the void and landed on the back of the giant Silverstone race powerhouse, punching a huge hole through it. The Silverstone crumbs scattered in the dark void, and the aura of the enormous Silverstone demigod was greatly weakened. However, it was still a demigod after all, and it couldn't be killed so easily. The ruthless attack made it realize that it was impossible for it to leave the weird-shaped dragon god of the 9 hells behind and rob the divine source item from the human boy. But in that case, it might as well get rid of this weird-shaped demigod first. Although the demigod expert of the Silverstone clan was heavily wounded and the giant silver stone hammer in its hand was sealed, it didn't affect it too much. A streak of eternal silver light burst out of the demigod expert of the Silverstone clan. The silver light blew away the attack of the Dragon of Tartarus as soon as it appeared. Then, it covered the body of the Silverstone clan and quickly recovered the wounds it had just suffered. At the same time, the demigod expert of the Silverstone clan flashed and appeared next to the Dragon of Tartarus. A silver stripe swept over and landed on the body of the Dragon of Tartarus, almost blowing it into halves. Fortunately, The eternal level ghost divine characters appeared on the body of the dragon of Tartarus in the end. While resisting the attack of the silver divine characters, its black dragon body was quickly recovered. At the same time, the dragon of Tartarus flashed and arrived at the side in the next moment, distancing itself from the giant Silverstone demigod. The demigod of the Silverstone clan had burst out. Silver light burst out of its body non-stop, filling the void nearby with killing intent. It even affected the battle between the other demigods nearby. Not only did the silver light explode towards the 9 underworld dragon, but it also targeted Yi Ziwei and concubine Yu, affecting the two women quite a bit. Fortunately, it wasn't a big problem for now. However, as the giant Silverstone demigod went on a rampage, the other two demigods seemed to have gone on a rampage too. Just like this Silverstone, they wanted to snatch the dark flame ghostly chains from Long Yu's hands. However, Yi Ziwei and consort Yu blocked their path and dealt them a heavy blow. Afterwards, they went berserk and attacked the two women. As for the demigod statue of the multi-winged race, it could only serve as a distraction because the demigod of the divine water race knew very well that the statue was controlled by someone. As long as the other 3 demigods were killed, they would be able to start fighting for the advanced, modified demigod source item. Once they obtained that divine source artifact, what kind of increase would their strength receive? This was simply unimaginable. Their status in their race would also be greatly improved. If they could learn something from the divine source items, they might even become the strongest demigods in their race. The temptation was too great. After becoming a demigod, it wasn't so easy to increase one's strength. Divine source items were one of the ways to increase one's strength quickly. Moreover, if it was an advanced modified demigod source item, it could completely increase their strength by several levels. After all, they had never seen a demigod source item of this level before, let alone owned one. Even super races in the Langiustar zone like the Sword race, the Machinery race, and the Six-Winged race didn't have many demigod source items of this level. It could even be said that the Divine Water race, the Silverstone race, or even the Soul race, who had difficulty using this divine source artifact, would be able to elevate their overall strength to a whole new level if they were to obtain this divine source artifact. The Divine Water race and the Silverstone race could rely on the enhancement brought by this demigod source item to conquer more territories and obtain more cultivation resources. In just 10 years, the overall strength of their race would greatly increase. As for the Soul race, they could also use this demigod source item to exchange for some extremely precious cultivation resources. After all, the Soul race couldn't use the dark flame ghostly chains too easily. One had to know that they were pure spiritual life forms. From this point of view, the 3 foreign demigods could be said to be competitors. This was because if any of them obtained this demigod source item, they would experience earth-shattering changes. But for the time being, they were still united. After all, they had to get rid of Consort Yu and the others first before they could have designs on the dark flame ghostly chains. Therefore, time was very tight for Long Yu. Kill, kill, kill. Long Yu was just as anxious. The dark flame ghostly chain stretched out from his hands like a black dragon, piercing through the sky. Flames of death burned on its body as it passed through the sovereign army of the Divine Water race. In a short period of time, it had already killed more than 5,000 Divine Water race members of the Sovereign Secret Realm. At the same time, Long Yu was also activating the Devil Dust Heart martial arts secret technique and continuously condensing Devil Dust clones. He had them throw the 9 underworld spheres in other directions. After all, there were a total of 8 sovereign legions on the battlefield, and they weren't under his control. Moreover, the other 2 sovereign legions of the Divine Water race were very close to him. As soon as Long Yu activated the Dark Flame Ghost Chains, they immediately made their move and swept towards Long Yu. However, Long Yu threw out a few 9 underworld spheres and instantly slowed down the time in that area by 70%. For a moment, the sovereign armies couldn't get close to him. Of course, this wasn't a long-term solution. Fortunately, the Grizzly Bear Demon race and the other 4 sovereign armies finally arrived. Haha, do your best, brother-in-law. I'll block them for you." With a loud laugh, Shuel Luo arrived in an instant and led the Blood Demon race sovereign army past Long Yu. Then, he flew toward the sovereign armies in other directions. Unlike before, Shuel Luo could see the situation of the Battle of Demigods very clearly. Although Consort Yu, Ji Tao, and Yi Ziwei were all very strong, their opponents were even stronger. After all, they were powerful beings who had been demigods for a long time. Compared to new demigods like Consort Yu and the others, they definitely had an advantage. If this went on, it was very likely that Consort Yu and the others would lose as a whole. Right now, the demigod experts of the Divine Water race, the Silverstone race, and the Soul race were all desperately trying to kill their opponents. Because whoever killed their opponent first would be able to attack Long Yu first and snatch the advanced modified demigod source item. Even the Divine Water race tried to use their clones to deal with Long Yu. Unfortunately, they were still blocked by Yi Ziwei's best efforts. In addition, the yellow sand was rolling on the battlefield, and the demigod stone statues of the multi-winged race were also able to cause some trouble to the demigod of the Divine Water race. Otherwise, the doppelganger of the Divine Water race would have already arrived behind Long Yu. Shuel Luo let out a hearty laugh. 10,000 Blood Demon race sovereigns' secret realm experts swept across the battlefield. Carrying with them a hot-blooded aura, they directly blocked the path of another Divine Water tribe member. Moreover, the Divine Water tribe member fell into the range of the 9 underworld sphere. Under the effect of time deceleration and the restraint of the sovereign army of the Blood Demon race, it was not easy for the sovereign army to approach Long Yu. Right now, Shuel Luo's individual strength was extremely strong. Although he was also a peak 7th stage sovereign like Long Yu and had yet to step into the demigod realm, he was not at a disadvantage when facing the 7th stage sovereigns of the Divine Water race. He could even easily fight 1 against 2 and kill them in a short period of time. In this period of time, Shuel Luo definitely did not pass in vain. He had cultivated some divine formations, including the methods of Grade 1 and Grade 2 divine formations. Moreover, he had comprehended the Revelation Grade divine characters and the absolute beginning Golden Pond. Among the 7th phase sovereign realm, he was basically at the peak. In this state, Shuel Luo could definitely go to the eroding moon ancient region to participate in the competition. It was a pity that there were not enough spots. The human race and the demon race combined only had 400 spots. Shuel Luo was not invited, so there was nothing he could do. On the other side, like Thunder and like Qing Feng, who had already reached the 5th phase sovereign realm, led the white feather monstrous race's sovereign army and flew past behind Long Yu. They quickly approached the other sovereign army of the Divine Water race. "Brother Long, do your best." When like Qing Feng passed by, he also cheered loudly. The white feather monstrous race's development was not bad. All of this was brought about by Long Yu. Without Long Yu, the white feather monstrous race's scattered troops would not have a place to settle down. "You guys do your best too." Long Yu nodded. He could feel the hot-bloodedness in the hearts of the people around him. He definitely could not let them down. The remaining 2 monstrous races' sovereign armies directly intercepted the Silverstone race's sovereign army. As for the Soul race's sovereign army, no one was able to stop them. They quickly approached Long Yu's position from above. Fortunately, Long had already relied on the Dark Flame Ghost to more or less annihilate the first Divine Water race's sovereign army. Then come at me together. The Soul race doesn't have a physical body. I can use the Dark Flame Ghost to kill them all in one fell swoop. Long Yu's eyes were calm. He didn't even call the 88 members of the Ghost Shadow tribe. Instead, he took the initiative to charge into the encirclement of the 3 Soul race's sovereign armies. This scene caused everyone present to be greatly shocked. How could Long Yu be so arrogant? This was the Soul race, an extremely troublesome and powerful race. If the entire sovereign army joined forces and used a mental attack, even Long Yu might be killed in a single wave. Why did he take the initiative to charge into the enemy's encirclement? Unbeknownst to them, Long Yu was most satisfied with the Soul race's opponents. This was because he had already reached the peak of the 7th phase sovereign realm. In addition, he had cultivated the pure world physique to the peak, and the ancient god seal of the pure world physique was in his mind. All of these factors added together made him completely unafraid of any mental attack below the demigod rank. It didn't matter how many of them there were. Chapter 1605. The silver radiance of the worldly purity body appeared on the surface of Long Yu's body. In front of him was an empty, silent galaxy. Hidden within the darkness were 3 legions of soul race sovereigns. Even though Hui Yuhao couldn't see their bodies, he could still sense their powerful mental energy fluctuations. These 3 legions of 10,000 soul race sovereigns had surrounded Long Yu in 3 different directions. Long Yu didn't retreat. Instead, he charged into the enemy's encirclement. The soul race sovereigns found this a little strange. Is this kid here to die? However, they didn't have much time to think. If it didn't make a move soon, the Dark Flame Lone Ghost, a high-grade modified Divine Source artifact, would fall into their hands. They didn't doubt that a Divine Source artifact like this could kill them. Just by looking at the power of the Dark Flame Lone Ghost that had just annihilated the Divine Water Race Sovereigns, they knew that it wasn't something that a mere sovereign's secret realm could withstand. Therefore, nearly 30,000 Soul Race Sovereigns, regardless of whether they were Sovereign's secret realm or Great Sovereign, all launched their attacks at Long Yu. Boundless mental energy, waves intertwined and condensed in the air, forming countless extremely powerful mental energy storms. These mental energy storms were divided into different elements. Different types of mental energy couldn't be fused together, so they all swept towards Long Yu, covering the sky and covering the earth. The space around him was completely enveloped. Long Yu. Many people in the surroundings were extremely shocked when they saw this scene. Some of them didn't know what Long Yu was capable of, so they couldn't understand why Long Yu was practically throwing away his life. However, something shocking happened very quickly. As the silver light condensed on the surface of Long Yu's body, it turned into a mirror. The moment the silver mirror appeared, the countless spiritual attacks were bounced back with 10 times the power. They whistled through the air and crashed into the armies of the 3 soul races rulers. So powerful, everyone was dumbfounded. The 4 beast race ruler legions had even forgotten about their opponents at this moment. Even the remaining Silverstone and Divine Water Race ruler legions were looking in that direction in shock. That incredibly powerful human was actually blocking the simultaneous attacks of 3 soul race ruler legions by himself. What was even more shocking was that he seemed to have withstood it. Even the 3 alien demigods found it hard to believe that they had seen such a scene. 1 against 30,000. Even they might not be able to do it if they were on the spot, right? Just what in the world was up with this human? First, he displayed a high-level modified Divine Essence artifact. Then, he did something as terrifying as facing off against 3 armies of beast sovereigns all by himself. Could it be that this place was a secret training ground for the humans and demons? Besides, he had never seen these 3 demigods before. The Divine Water Race and the Silverstone Race were far from the human race and the monster race's territory, so they rarely encountered each other. However, the Soul Race was different. The Soul Race often fought with the monster race, so they were very clear about the strength of the monster race and the human race. Why had such a powerful being suddenly appeared? Also, these demigods were definitely not weak. Were they new demigods? The Eclipse Moon ancient territory had just ended. It was normal for the major races to have some new demigods. However, even if there were new demigods in the human race and the monster race, shouldn't they be training in their own territory? How could they come to a place so far away from the human race and the monster race's territory? Unless a powerful demigod activated a space-time tunnel, it was impossible for them to cross such a long distance. But why did they come here? Long Yu's performance shocked the 3 demigods in the field. They thought of many things, and all of them became very vigilant towards Long Yu. To be on the safe side, they would turn around and run right now, leaving the rest of the Dominator Legion to intercept the humans and demons. the three demigods would definitely be able to escape. After all, what they had seen right now was beyond their imagination. It was very likely to pose a great threat to the three species. However, their desire for a high-level modified divine essence artifact made them stay despite the risk. They would not give up just like that. So what if long you could fight 30,000 alone? The three demigods were also existences that could do this. As long as they killed their respective demigod opponents, they would be able to easily obtain that high-level modified divine essence artifact, the Dark Flame Ghost. This path seemed to be easy. It seemed like a high-level divine essence artifact was right in front of them. However, they did not know that they were still very far away from a high-level modified divine essence artifact. On the battlefield, Long Yu activated the world-cleansing soul mirror and reflected a large portion of the mental shockwaves back at him, instantly wiping out a large swath of the nearby soul sovereigns. However, the world-cleansing soul mirror quickly lost its power, and an even more ferocious mental shockwave blasted towards him. Illusion Field. Long Yu activated the Dark Flame Ghost and began to roar and slaughter in the battlefield. As for himself, he had completely turned into nothingness under the cover of this first-grade god formation. Even those mental blast storms would not be able to harm him for a short period of time. However, the first-grade god formation of the illusion field could not make Long Yu invincible. This was because there were some soul race members among the three sovereigns who knew how to use the Tao of nothingness. They were actually able to use their special mental and soul power to disintegrate the entire illusion field. The Dark Flame Ghost was instantly enraged. It roared and swallowed group after group of soul race sovereigns. The three soul race sovereigns had long since fallen into chaos. They were basically dodging the Dark Flame Ghost attacks. They had even forgotten to deal with Long Yu. After all, more than half of the soul race sovereigns present had been killed after the world-cleansing soul mirror's attack. The remaining ones were scared out of their wits. They did not have the courage to face Long Yu head-on. The three soul race sovereigns began to scatter. Naturally, Long Yu wouldn't let them escape so easily. Even the 88 members of the Ghost Shadow tribe had rushed over. They activated the Hell Ghost Ceiling Array formation, enveloping a large area of the starry sky in the vicinity. As for the soul race sovereigns that had escaped earlier, they were taken care of by Jiao Feng, Si Yuanbai, Shi Yingwu, Shu Chan, Dugu Yijian, and Yin Huanma. The Void Nether Dragon Blade carried everyone through the void. In a flash, it would catch up to the soul race sovereigns that had escaped the furthest. The result that Long Yu wanted was that he would not let a single one escape. On the other side, the four monster race clans had already clashed with the remaining foreign sovereigns. However, they were only delaying their opponents. With the help of the 9 underworld sphere, there was no need for them to fight head-on. Although the foreign sovereigns were slowly advancing towards Long Yu had already killed more than 90% of the soul race sovereigns present before the remaining foreign sovereigns could even get close. Even if the real illusion field was destroyed, he still had the ability to turn into nothingness. However, when he turned into nothingness, the nearby demigod of the Silverstone race split his attention and threw a silver shockwave at Long Yu. This shockwave directly shattered half of his illusion field, allowing the other soul race clans to discover his location. Unfortunately, this did not delay him for too long. The silver light on Long Yu's surface continued to flash. Any mental attacks that landed on his body were blocked by the silver light of the worldly purity body. They were unable to penetrate his mind and soul. The defense of the worldly purity body had already surpassed the level that these soul race clans could break through. In less than 15 minutes, there were less than 1,000 sovereigns left from the 3 soul race sovereigns present. The remaining ones were scattered, so Long Yu could not be bothered to deal with them. It was more than enough to leave them to Shi Yingwu and the others. The ancient Azura Palace instantly grew in size. The power of the disclosure-level Azura characters rapidly condensed on the battlefield. The Azura light continuously shot out from the ancient Azura Palace. Every ray of pitch-black Azura character light could completely kill a soul race clansman that was preparing to escape. The four types of energy that formed the four symbols death prison were extremely destructive to the mind and soul. It was a piece of cake for them to deal with the soul race clansmen. With a few of them cleaning up the battlefield, Long Yu did not need to pay attention to the remnants of the battlefield on this side. He flew towards the blood demon race's army of sovereigns as fast as he could. His figure flickered, and he appeared in front of the blood demon race's army of sovereigns. He faced the second army of sovereigns from the divine water race and waved the dark flame ghost chain. He had to clean up the entire army of sovereigns as fast as possible. Long Yu did not pause. After the dark flame ghost chain appeared, pitch-black flames instantly burned the sky. The entire void was filled with the aura of death. The minds and souls of the divine water race sovereigns were completely destroyed. Then, their bodies were devoured by Long Yu's balls of the 9 underworlds. In this area, Long Yu had already condensed quite a few balls of the 9 underworlds. Therefore, the flow of time in the entire area had been slowed down. Compared to Long Yu, it was as if the movements of these foreign races had been slowed down by 70%. They did not have the strength to dodge or counterattack at all. The speed at which they were being cleaned up was extremely fast. However, in order to condense so many devil dust clones, Long Yu had used up countless elixirs. These elixirs all had the effect of recovering energy. Furthermore, each elixir had a different medicinal effect. They were not the same type. They were specially refined by Liao Lele in preparation for this fierce battle. After consuming so many elixirs, Long Yu was barely able to maintain the consumption of energy in his body. When he had almost wiped out the army of sovereigns from the divine water race, he finally could not hold on any longer. With a loud bang, he chose to self-detonate in the void. He needed to reconstruct his body and consume the elixirs that he had consumed earlier to replenish his energy. This scene caused the rest of the foreign races to be stunned. What was this guy doing? Why did he suddenly self-detonate? Chapter 1606. Long Yu's sudden self-detonation caused the surrounding demonic humans to be at a loss. Even the masses of the Void Galaxy who didn't know the truth were dumbfounded. What was Lord Long Yu doing? Why did he suddenly self-detonate in the middle of a good fight? But before they realized what was going on, Long Yu's body was quickly reconstructed in the void. His Devil Dust Heart martial arts secret technique had been cultivated to the peak, and there were many ancient god tattoos engraved in the ancient god brain domain, which increased the body reconstruction effect of the Devil Dust Heart by more than 5 times. Even if Long Yu self-destructed, if he wanted to rebuild his body, he would only need 2 breaths of time. As long as the Devil Dust Heart was not destroyed, he would be immortal. At least, that was the case in terms of physical body. Just like the Geo Dragon Emperor, even though his spirit and soul had been sealed in the 9 Hells prison steel by the Envoy of Death, his physical body still broke through the seal and was reconstructed. That was the strength of the Devil Dust Heart. After all, it was a secret martial art technique obtained from the 9 Hells prison steel. After 2 breaths, Long Yu's physical body was completely reconstructed. The following battles were not too difficult for him. After all, with the assistance of the Blood Demon Clan and the other 3 armies of demonic cultivators, it was only a matter of time before he killed the rest of the armies of demonic cultivators. He had to do it before Consort Yu and the others were at a disadvantage. At this moment, the battle of the demigods on the battlefield had begun to favor the aliens. The 3 alien demigods performed all kinds of deified techniques, and their power density was 12 times and 13 times higher than that of regular people, which is a lot higher than the power density of the new demigods, such as Yi Ziwei and Yu Fei, who were only 10 times higher. After they exerted their full strength, even Consort Yu, Yi Ziwei, and Ji Tao found it a bit difficult to resist. Long Yu had to speed up. Right now, the Dark Flame Ghost was his most common method of wiping out enemies in a large area. However, he still had other methods that could wipe out enemies in a large area. Although they weren't as powerful as the Dark Flame Ghost, they could still kill quite a few foreign sovereigns. Divinize Divine Ability. Dragon Breath of the Nine Underworlds. An enormous, illusory dragon of the nine underworlds appeared behind him. Then, a wave of terrifying dragon breath of the nine underworlds burst forth, instantly piercing through the void for 100 kilometers and killing over 100 divine water race sovereigns in its path. Divinized divine ability. Before becoming a demigod, Long Yu was the only one who could perform it. It was the reward he received in the eroding moon ancient domain. Those alien races couldn't imagine such power, let alone resist it. When Long Yu reached the peak of the 7th phase Great Dominator, it meant that in this world, apart from demigods, no one would be his match. The Jade branding mark continued to take effect, weakening the power density of the opponents he came into contact with by half, turning them into existences that were even thinner than cotton. He easily penetrated them, killed them, and burned them to ashes. Unfortunately, under the attack of the dragon breath of the nine underworlds, those foreign races that were killed were completely destroyed in body and soul. Even the ball of the nine underworlds was unable to devour anything. This was something that couldn't be helped. Fortunately, he would soon be able to devour demigod realm foreign races. As Long Yu thought to himself, he continuously used the 3 divinized divine abilities, Dragon Breath of the Nine Underworlds, Soul Seal Siphon, and Hand of the Nine Underworlds. However, the one that killed the most opponents was still the Dragon Breath of the Nine Underworlds. Both the Soul Seal Siphon and Hand of the Nine Underworlds could kill some of the foreign sovereigns, but there weren't many of them, so they weren't very effective. Only the Dragon Breath of the Nine Underworlds was an offensive divine ability, so it was the most effective. When the 3 divine abilities were used at the same time, coupled with the high-grade Dark Flame Ghost Lock, Long Yu's speed in killing the foreign sovereigns increased by at least 1/3. This was already a very good result. The Dark Flame Ghost Lock alone was very fast, but Long Yu still felt that it wasn't enough. He had to kill them as fast as he could. The foreign sovereigns' armies all collapsed. Even the ones that hadn't been targeted by Long Yu yet felt fear in their hearts, and they all began to flee into the distant void. Long Yu had sent the sovereign legions of the 4 monstrous race armies to intercept them, but they were simply unable to stop them. He then had the Nether Void Dragon Blade lead Sunset Dance and the others in pursuit. Under the pursuit of the Nether Void Traversal, not a single Outlander could escape from the Nether Void. The experts of the Ghost Shadow Tribe also hid in the nearby void, specifically targeting the foreign sovereigns who tried to escape. More importantly, Long Yu had already ordered Man Exine, Chihua, and a few hundred other experts to spread out along the escape routes of the foreign sovereigns' armies. No matter where the foreign sovereigns tried to escape, the scattered existences would eventually be wiped out. Not a single one remained. The foreign sovereigns' armies had completely collapsed. After Long Yu wiped out the 2 sovereigns' armies of the Divine Water Tribe, he didn't bother with the 3 remaining Silverstone sovereigns' armies. The 3 sovereigns' armies had been scared out of their wits, and they had long since collapsed. It was time for the 4 sovereigns' armies to practice their skills. There couldn't be a better time for them to take action. If they couldn't even win against such a defeated opponent, then they were too weak. Long Yu immediately turned around and headed in the direction of the fierce battle between the demigods. This scene caused the others in the surroundings to be shocked once more. Did this kid feel that dealing with the sovereign's armies wasn't enough, and he wanted to challenge the demigods? If it were any other 7th stage sovereigns, they would probably be instantly killed by the shockwaves of the battle, even if they only got close to the demigods. But Long Yu wasn't afraid at all. Long Yu, he's really strong. It's hard to imagine what kind of super expert he would be if he could become a demigod. Looks like it's time to expand the territory of the Void Galaxy. The cultivation resources we've taken from the humans and monsters are almost all used up. That's true. Speaking of which, we have to work hard too. We can't completely rely on Long Yu and the others to survive. Conversations like this kept popping up among the 4 sovereigns' armies. Some of them had been displeased at first. Why did they come to this remote place instead of staying in the army? And now, they finally considered the Void Galaxy as their home, the base of their development. This feeling was completely different from when they were in the army on the battlefield. Back then, these fellows mainly wanted to fight for others and rarely thought about things like the survival of the human race. Even without them on the battlefield, the army was still a solid barrier that the alien races couldn't easily break through. But things were different now. The Void Galaxy was their home, their back garden. No alien races were allowed to set foot there. Right now, they were protecting their own homes. They were personally participating in the battle. Once they retreated, the situation of the entire battlefield might be changed. This sense of honor and glory spurred them to fight to the death against the non-human kind. They wouldn't let a single non-human kind live. When they saw Long Yu flying toward the battlefield of demigods, they were even more impressed. As expected of Long Yu, he dared to fight against the powerful demigods of the alien races when he was only a 7th-rank Great Dominator. It was said that he had helped kill 2 demigods of the Ice Gods and 1 demigod of the Desolate Gods. It wasn't a lie. At that time, Long Yu only played a minor role in restraining the alien races. But now, once he took action, the victory would be decided. The Netherworld ball appeared above his head and swallowed all the light, time, and space around like a black hole. As Long Yu stepped forward, the influence of the Netherworld ball on the flow of time directly covered the demigod of the divine water race that was closest to him. You're courting death. The demigod of the divine water race was furious. It didn't expect that Long Yu would come to its door before it went to trouble him. Wasn't he looking down on it too much? Its gaze immediately locked onto the dark flame ghost chain on Long Yu's body. At this moment, the dark flame ghost was like a giant snake covered in pitch-black flames, wrapping around Long Yu from head to toe, making him look like an emissary from hell. In Long Yu's ancient god brain, the effect of the star branding tattoo was activated. Covered by the effect of the sphere of the abyss, the demigod of the divine water race immediately found that its power density dropped sharply. It was originally 12 times, but now it was only 6 times. It wouldn't be a problem if it was facing Long Yu, but more importantly, Yi Ziwei and the demigod stone statues of the multi-winged race were dealing with it. In the next moment, Yi Ziwei knew that this was the best opportunity. While the demigod of the divine water race was distracted, she finally performed her long-hidden killer move. Suppression of 10,000 lightning. The thundermark of Genesis on her forehead instantly burst out the terrifying power of the thundermark of Genesis, which was a derivative of the power of the metal class. More importantly, the suppression of 10,000 lightning was the ultimate awakening skill that she and her thundermark of Genesis had awakened to the 12th level. Although the power of this move wasn't particularly powerful, it was already the most powerful move for Yi Ziwei right now. Also, the effect was obvious when it was used to deal with the demigod of the divine water race whose power density had been reduced by half. Countless divine thunders burst out of the thunder seal of Primordium like countless mountains of lightning from all directions, completely suppressing the demigod of the divine water race. Woo! A painful howl burst out of the demigod of the divine water race. The pain of the suppression of 10,000 lightning made his whole body suffer. The demigod body of the divine water race that was in the shape of a gray wave suddenly shrank a lot, and it was devoured by the supreme divine thunder. Then, the demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race, under the control of Consort Yu, also burst out the most powerful strength. At this moment, the sandstorm gathered into a sand saber, fell from the sky, and slashed the demigod of the divine water race that was suppressed by 10,000 lightning. The entire body of the divine water race was cut into halves. Devour! Long Yu raised his hand, and the terrifying power of the sphere of the abyss finally fell on the demigod of the divine water race. In the infinite lightning, Long Yu's eyes were full of expectation. Chapter 1607. Dark beams of light were bursting out of the sphere of Tartarus and quickly enshrouded the demigod of the divine water race. The demigod of the divine water race who had been cut into halves was still struggling to reunite and recover his body, but the dark, entangling rays of light that blossomed from the sphere of Tartareth completely separated the two halves of the demigod of the divine water race and devoured them with terrifying power. This was the first time that Long Yu had tried to kill a demigod with his own strength, and it was also the first time that he had tried to kill a powerful being in the demigod level. He could sense that the power of the demigod of the divine water race was flowing into the sphere of Tartarus. The power of the divine characters and the tissues of the demigod were all devoured by the sphere of Tartarus. Although the demigod of the divine water race was still struggling, he couldn't stop the process of being devoured at all. Seeing that, Yi Ziwei immediately flashed to the side and ignored the demigod of the divine water race. Instead, she went to help Consort Yu fight against the demigod of the Silverstone race who seemed to have gone mad. As for the demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race, it also left the area under Consort Yu's control and went to help Consort Yu resist the demigod of the soul race who had burst out all his strength. The demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race didn't have a soul, so the attacks launched by the demigod of the soul race were completely useless. No matter what kind of attacks the demigod of the soul race launched at Consort Yu, the demigod stone statue of the multi-winged race would resist them easily and then try to fight back. In the 2 versus 1 situation, Consort Yu gradually gained the upper hand. Ji Tao and Yi Ziwei worked together and gradually suppressed the demigod of the Silverstone race. On Long Yu's side, he could clearly feel that the sphere of Tartarus was devouring more and more power. Heavily wounded, the demigod of the divine water race couldn't resist the sphere of Tartarus's devouring at all. After about half an hour, all the demigods of the divine water race were finally devoured by the sphere of Tartarus. So far, the divine water race that came to attack the Void Galaxy this time was completely annihilated. From the demigods to the dominators, none of the divine water race survived. Long Yu's ball of Tartareth, on the other hand, had reached the strongest level ever after it swallowed the demigods of the divine water tribe. Within the range of its power, the flow of time was slowed down by more than 80%. It meant that Long Yu could slow down the flow of time by 5 times. When it came to cultivation, a day of cultivation for others was equivalent to 5 days of cultivation for him. If others cultivated for a year, it was equivalent to him cultivating for 5 years. This effect was practically invincible. It was a pity that he was the only one who could use this method. Otherwise, if he could make the entire Void Galaxy fall into a zone where the flow of time was slowed down, how fast would the cultivation of everyone in the Void Galaxy improve? If I swallow the demigod of the Silverstone race, Long Yu couldn't help but think that. Then, the demigod of the Silverstone race suffered. The demigod of the Silverstone race was already at a disadvantage when facing Ji Tao and Yi Ziwei at the same time. Now that Long Yu had joined in, the demigod of the Silverstone race's power was reduced by half, and he had no ability to resist at all. Ji Tao instantly unleashed the eternal-level ghost divine language, and Yi Ziwei used the final awakening skill of Thousand Thunders again, smashing the demigod of the Silverstone race into pieces. Then, the power of the sphere of Tartarus spread out, and countless entangled beams of light covered the enormous body of the demigod of the Silverstone race, as if it were the end of the world, and began to devour it. Devour. With a thought from Long Yu, the sphere of Tartarus grew again, and the demigod of the Silverstone race became the nutrition of the sphere of Tartarus and the irresistible power. In the end, there was only one demigod of the soul race left. It was a pity that the demigod didn't have a body and couldn't be devoured by the sphere of Tartarus. But with everybody working together, he was soon killed. His soul and spirit were completely destroyed, and there was no trace of him in this world. In this battle, the Void Cosmos had a great victory, and everybody who participated in the battle had gained a lot. After all, the opponent had a total of 9 foreign race sovereign armies. Even if Long Yu had devoured more than half of them, there were still 30 to 40,000 foreign race small worlds remaining. They could search for many things from them. Just the items of creation alone could be found, and there might even be divine text essences and so on. All in all, those things belonged to other people who participated in the battle, and Long Yu didn't need them. The best use for those resources was to give them to other people in the void cosmos to develop and grow stronger. Easyway and Consort You, on the other hand, didn't find anything useful in this battle. After all, the two demigods have been devoured by Long Yu's sphere of Tartarus, and even their small worlds had become the nutrition of the sphere of Tartarus. Nothing was left. Only the small worlds of the soul race remained, and they could enter and search. Of course, it was a demigod's small world after all, and there would definitely be a lot of good things in it. At least a few of the essence of divine language and the essence of the absolute beginning could be found. For demigods, it was too easy to get some essence of divine language and the essence of the absolute beginning. And every single divine character essence was worth a considerable amount of money. Long Yu didn't bother to search for that part either. He left it to Yi Ziwei and Consort You. As for Long Yu, he was digesting the changes brought about by the sphere of Tartarus's devouring. Without a doubt, the sphere of Tartarus had devoured 30 to 40,000 alien sovereigns and 2 alien demigods. It was almost a world-shaking change. Right now, the sphere of Tartarus could create an area where time flowed 6 times faster. For Long Yu, the time needed for him to improve was even shorter. If the sphere of Tartarus was by his side at all times, Long Yu would be able to try to break through to the demigod level in a month at most. During this month, Long Yu planned to head to the Soul Clan's territory to spend his time. At the same time, he would be able to obtain some shadow essence, which was quite useful to him. Most importantly, he still wanted the 9 nether sphere to devour more. If it was the soul race that had been killed by the dark flame ghosts, the sphere of Tartarus wouldn't be able to devour anything. But if it was the soul race that had been killed in other ways, and only their mental and spiritual power had been destroyed, it could still devour some power. In the battle just now, time was too tight, so Long Yu could only give up on the soul race and clean them up one after another. But if he entered the soul race's territory alone, there was no need to be in such a hurry. He could totally take his time and let the sphere of Tartarus devour some powerful soul race members. The effect should be pretty good. However, Long Yu had to be careful in all his actions. If he encountered a demigod of the soul race, the situation would be quite bad. After all, the all-purpose life-saving technique of turning into nothingness was useless in front of a demigod expert. Of course, before he officially set off, Long Yu had to take care of some things first. The battle was over. No one knew when the next wave of attacks from the Divine Water Race, the Silverstone Race, and the Soul Race would be. But during this period, the galaxy would experience a relatively large wave of development. After all, many people had obtained a lot of good things in this battle. As for Long Yu and the others, they first went back and held a celebration banquet for everyone. Then, they celebrated that Yi Ziwei could step into the demigod realm and become a peak existence in a galaxy, and even the entire human race and the demon race. I didn't expect you to give that ultimate creation item to Yi Ziwei, Long Yu said to Consort You with a smile. Her talent is indeed the best among all the people I know. Consort You pursed her lips and smiled. Yi Ziwei toasted Long Yu. Long Yu, I left one step earlier than you, but you'll catch up very soon. By then, I'm afraid I won't be a match for you. We're all on the same side. There's no need to talk about opponents. Long Yu shook his head with a smile, picked up his wine cup, and downed it in one gulp. At the same time, he thought of Red Oriole and Moon Song. Those 2 girls were also absorbing the ultimate creation item. They should be close to becoming demigods, right? Although Red Oriole and Moon Song were slightly slower than Yi Ziwei, it didn't mean that they were weaker than her. The main reason was that Yi Ziwei had been cultivating wholeheartedly. She had reached the 7th phase Great Ruler realm before the 2 girls, and had started consolidating her cultivation a little earlier than them. But then again, Red Oriole and Moon Song should be close. Long Yu didn't plan to wait for them to come out of seclusion. Instead, he planned to leave first and take a stroll around the Soul Race's territory. Before he left, he wanted to get some benefits for everyone in the galaxy. He returned to his little world, went to the area where the Bone Race and the Remnant Race lived, and called out to Yu Wufang. As you can see, I'm on the verge of becoming a demigod. In fact, I even acquired a god spirit martial technique from the eroding moon ancient region. Those unbounded martial techniques you have won't be of much use to me anymore, Yang Qi said coolly. Through the nether void dragon blade, Long Yu coldly conveyed these words to Yu Wufang. Long Yu didn't feel any pity for the foreign races. Even though they had given him a lot of benefits, they were no longer of any use to him. Long Yu naturally didn't want to keep them. When Yu Wufang heard this, he was extremely panicked. But he didn't panic. Instead, he quickly thought of a solution. The bone race has a spell that allows us to swear allegiance. If we swear allegiance to you, can we continue to live? Yu Wufang conveyed his meaning to the nether void dragon blade, and then little void conveyed it to Long Yu. Oh, hearing this, Long Yu was a little interested. Then Yu Wufang explained that the so-called Oath of Loyalty would allow him to know everything that was going through the minds of the Bone Race clansmen. Of course, that included the location of the unending grade martial skills that they had yet to hand over. Simply put, if the Bone Race swore allegiance to Long Yu, then he would have control of everything the Bone Race had. Chapter 1608. If that was the case, Long Yu was quite interested. However, there were 300,000 Bone Race members in total. Long Yu couldn't be bothered to control them all. Since that was the case, he'd let them become followers of others. After swearing their loyalty, these Bone Race members would have the status of followers. Yu Wufang, swear your loyalty to me first. As for the other Bone Race and remnant races, I'll let my people choose freely. Those who are willing to swear their loyalty can continue to live as my followers. Those who are unwilling will be completely annihilated from the void. Long Yu said to Yu Wufang. Yu Wufang could only accept the order. His entire body started to emit an awe-inspiring aura, after which this awe-inspiring aura started to spread towards Long Yu. Because of his pure world body, even if this aura was harmful to him, it wouldn't hurt him. After all, even the leader of the Bone Race, Yu Wufang, was only a 5-star emperor. He hadn't even reached the ruler's secret realm. Therefore, he generously let the other party swear their loyalty. If there were any problems, he'd immediately kill all the Bone Race members. It wouldn't be a big loss to him. Soon, Yu Wufang's dense aura enveloped Long Yu. Then, Long Yu felt a soul connection with him. Through this Bone Race connection, Long Yu could clearly feel Yu Wufang's thoughts and even dig out his deep memories. He even knew where the endless grade martial skills of the Bone Race and the vestigial clans were hidden. This is a true oath of loyalty. In that case, there's no need to kill them all. Long Yu nodded in satisfaction. There were 300,000 Bone Race members here. If they were all distributed to the people in the void, each person would have several followers. After all, Long Yu only planned to distribute them to the fighters. As for the white feather monster race civilians, he didn't need them. The cultivation of these Bone Race members wasn't high, but if they were given enough resources, they could still rise. According to the current situation, as long as there were enough resources, the strength of the warriors in the void would increase by a large margin. After all, as long as a follower of the Bone Race and Vestigial Race reached the sovereign secret realm, they would have a decent fighting strength. Moreover, a follower could help them with many things, such as saving time for cultivation and increasing their cultivation realm faster. This kind of thing, no matter how he looked at it, was very cost-effective. The main thing was that Long Yu was now completely certain that the Oath of Allegiance of the Bone Race was not harmful to Long Yu. Otherwise, the World Pure Body would have reacted. This kind of Oath of Loyalty technique was probably used in ancient times by the commoners or warriors of the Bone Race to swear allegiance to the nobility and royalty of the Bone Race. But now, there was no other way. They could only use it to swear allegiance to Long Yu and the others. If Long Yu made a move, not a single one of the 300,000 Bone Race members would survive. Right now, most of the Bone Race members were only in the transcendent secret realm. But as long as they had enough resources, it wouldn't be difficult for them to reach the king's secret realm or even the ruler's secret realm. Then, after Yu Wufang swore his loyalty to Long Yu, Long Yu learned where the Bone Race members had stored the unbounded martial skills. It was in their bodies. There was a special group of bone folk that wasn't particularly strong. However, they had hidden all of the unbounded martial skill jade slips inside their bodies. If Long Yu wanted to exterminate the bone folk, he definitely wouldn't have noticed them and destroyed the jade slips along with the rest of the unbounded martial skill. But now, Long Yu had actually ordered Yu Wufong to take out all these martial skill jade slips. It had to be said that the Bone Race members had been very useful to Long Yu. At the very least, the Warmonger's celestial body and the unbounded grass that he had been using for a long time had come from them. And now, he had even more martial skills. Among them, there were even Supreme Grade and Supreme Grade unbounded martial skills. The Supreme Grade and Supreme Grade unbounded martial skills were basically God Spirit martial skills. Long Yu's previous guess was correct. Among the Bone Race members' martial skills, there was 1 Supreme Grade unbounded martial skill and 3 Supreme Grade unbounded martial skills. From what Long Yu could tell, these 4 martial skills were at least on the same level as Converging Spirit Light. God Spirit martial skills were Supreme Grade and Supreme Grade unbounded martial skills. Perhaps it could be said that Supreme Grade unbounded martial skills were godlike martial skills. Converging Spirit Light was not particularly difficult to cultivate, be it in terms of power or effectiveness. As for Supreme Grade unbounded martial skills, they were true God Spirit martial skills. The Bone Race actually had a martial skill jade slip that surpassed anything they had found in the eroding moon ancient region. From this, it could be seen that Long Yu's decision to subjugate these Bone Race members wasn't a bad one. In addition to that, the Bone Race also had dozens of high-grade, unbounded martial skills on the same level as the Warmonger Celestial Body and the Unbounded Grasp. All of these martial skills belonged to the forces of the Void Galaxy. Some were demonic martial skills, some were human martial skills, and some were shared by both races. Simply put, almost all of the warriors of the Void Galaxy would have the opportunity to cultivate high-grade, unbounded martial skills. There are also quite a few mid-grade, unbounded martial skills. Although they weren't particularly strong, they were still very valuable to the average cultivator. Long Yu was confident that, with the help of the unbounded martial skill jade slips, as well as the followers of the Bone Folk and remnant tribes, the overall strength of the Starry River would increase by at least double in 3 months. This was already an extremely terrifying speed. For ordinary humans and demons, even a Dominator army would need at least 3 or 4 years to double their combat strength. Then, Long Yu spread the news that he could obtain the followers of the Bone Race and the Vestigial Race. The warriors of every galaxy rejoiced. Followers of different races, this kind of thing was extremely rare. Even in the human race and demon races territories, in the past tens of thousands of years, they had never encountered such a thing. Long Yu was actually able to obtain so many followers of the Bone Race. It was really amazing. Since it was Long Yu who said it, they didn't doubt that there wouldn't be any danger. They trusted Long Yu. Ever since Long Yu displayed his astonishing combat prowess in the previous battle, his status in the entire Void Galaxy had skyrocketed, to the point where he was even higher than the demigods. This was because they had clearly witnessed Long Yu's combat prowess. He hadn't reached the demigod level yet, but given his talent, it was only a matter of time before he became one. When Long Yu became a demigod, there wouldn't be many in the world who could rival Long Yu. After all, Long Yu was only a 7th phase sovereign, and yet he was already able to fight the demigods of the alien races head-on. How terrifying was that? Since they trusted Long Yu, they all expressed their willingness to accept the Bone Race followers. Long Yu released the 300,000 Bone Race members from his small world and had them line up in the Void Galaxy. These Bone Race members had family, friends, lovers, and relationships. Long Yu tried to keep them together so that they could be chosen by the warriors of the same Void Galaxy. The followers of the Bone Race could be used to improve their fighting prowess. Of course, they could also be used as servants, and their fighting prowess wouldn't be improved. But in any case, the existence of these followers would definitely strengthen the overall strength of the Void Galaxy. Moreover, Long Yu had added over 100 unbounded level jade slips to the Void Galaxy's library. As for the 3 Supreme Grade and 1 Supreme Grade unbounded level jade slips, Long Yu had kept them for himself. Long Yu didn't plan on cultivating these 4 techniques for now, but he definitely couldn't give them to ordinary cultivators. If they weren't important figures in the Void Galaxy or someone who had made a great contribution, Long Yu wouldn't pass them on. Long Yu would first cultivate the death hell of 4 symbols, a forbidden skill of the ancient gods. If he had the time, he would take a look at the Supreme Grade unbounded level God Spirit technique. But right now, Long Yu didn't have the time. It took 7 days for Long Yu to sell all 300,000 Bone Race members. Basically, every warrior of the Void Galaxy was given 6 or 7 Bone Race followers, which they happily trained. After the Bone Race had sworn their oaths, the followers could communicate easily with others. They didn't need to use the Void Nether Dragon Blade like Long Yu did. After the matter was settled, Long Yu brought Yu Wufang with him and left the Void Galaxy, rushing towards the Soul Race's territory. "My lord, are you preparing to go to the Outsider's territory?" When Yu Wufang saw Long Yu's movements, he was a little surprised. "That's right. You don't need to worry about this. First, stay in my little world and raise your cultivation. At the very least, you have to reach the ruler's secret realm. Otherwise, there's no point in having you as my follower." Long Yu said indifferently. He provided Yu Wufang with a huge amount of heaven and earth spiritual qi, as well as many creation items. These were all used to increase his cultivation. Yu Wufang's cultivation talent was very high. As one of the few remaining leaders of the Bone Race, as well as having the bloodline of the Bone Race's royal bloodline, once he had enough cultivation resources, he could quickly raise his cultivation realm. Moreover, he didn't need to consolidate his cultivation for too long. Of course, after reaching the ruler's secret realm, no matter how many cultivation resources he had, his cultivation speed wouldn't be too fast. But that was after reaching the ruler's secret realm. At the very least, Yu Wufang had to reach the ruler's secret realm first, and he wasn't too far from that goal. Chapter 1609. There was a tradition in each of the 3 nearby star fields. Regardless of whether the races were allied or not, as long as they entered the territory of another race, it would be considered a great provocation, unless they had been invited in advance. This also showed how good the relationship between the human race and the demon race was. Basically, the human race and the demon race could be called the same race. They just maintained their own culture and history, and there was no way to completely unify them in terms of pills and martial techniques. At this moment, Long Yu was flying quickly toward the edge of the Soul Race's territory. The Nether Void Dragon Blade continued to teleport through the void. Every time it teleported, it would bring Long Yu millions of miles away. However, this distance was still too small compared to the vastness of the void. If he wanted to officially enter the territory of the Soul Race, it would take him several more days. Long Yu felt that his speed was a little slow, so he decided to use some of the space-time teleportation formations along the way. These space-time teleportation formations were built by the Soul Race. They could allow any existence to teleport over long distances. However, for Long Yu, if he wanted to use these formations, he would have to be prepared for 2 fierce battles every time he used them. This was because these space-time teleportation formations would definitely be guarded by many powerful Soul Race members. The closer the space-time teleportation formations were, the stronger the guards would be. But there shouldn't be any demigod Soul Race members in a place like this. Long Yu thought to himself as the corners of his mouth curled up. With his current strength, as long as no demigod realm experts appeared, nothing would be a problem. Robbing 1 or 2 space-time teleportation arrays would not be a big deal. However, if he did that, it would alarm the Soul Race. Long Yu had to ensure that the other party would not spread the news. In this way, the void domain created by the Dragon Skeleton Tower was extremely important. Just like before, Long Yu couldn't let a single soul go. Very quickly, Long Yu found a space-time teleportation array. This was the Soul Clan's space-time teleportation array at the outermost periphery. If he used this space-time teleportation array, Long Yu should be able to save at least 3 to 4 days of time and enter the Soul Clan's territory. This was not bad for him. Moreover, he had come to kill the Soul Race. It didn't matter if he started killing now or after entering the Soul Race's territory. After turning into nothingness, Long Yu gradually approached the space-time teleportation formation. What was more troublesome was that there were many wandering Soul Race patrols nearby. Although he couldn't see them with the naked eye, Long Yu could easily sense their existence. If he directly attacked the space-time teleportation formation, the Soul Race patrols outside would survive. This was not a situation Long Yu wanted to see. In his illusory state, he approached the Soul Race patrollers one after another. These Soul Race patrollers were all 3rd and 4th phase dominators. In terms of cultivation, they were already very strong. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been arranged to patrol the outermost space-time transfer array. However, it was extremely easy for Long Yu to kill these fellows. He could even kill them all without making a sound. Long Yu didn't use the 9 Underworld Sphere or the Dark Flame ghostly chains. Instead, he used the Boundless Grasp. The Dark Demon Divine runes that specifically targeted spiritual energy could instantly kill any Soul Race cultivator in the ruler's mystic realm. After almost an incense stick time, Long Yu killed all the Soul Race patrols outside. However, at this time, the Soul Race guarding the space-time teleportation formation also noticed that something was wrong. Combat teams swarmed out of the space-time teleportation formation. Long Yu didn't hesitate. He immediately activated the Dragon Skeleton Tower's Void Domain and enveloped the entire space-time teleportation formation. This space-time teleportation formation was relatively important to the Soul Race. However, they had only arranged for 1,000 Soul Race experts to guard it. The overall combat strength of the guards here was much weaker than the Soul Race's sovereign army. They posed no threat to Long Yu. Moreover, the space-time teleportation formation was relatively small. The Void Domain could completely envelop it, allowing Long Yu to slowly use his methods. Within the Void Domain, any spatial divine runes would be sealed. The space-time teleportation formation was no exception. As long as the Void Domain wasn't destroyed, the space-time teleportation formation wouldn't be able to be activated. After everything was set up, Long Yu started using all kinds of methods to kill the 1,000 Soul Race Sovereign Realm experts. First, he used the Dark Flame ghostly chains. With a sweep, he killed 800 Soul Race experts. After all, the pressure on Long Yu was quite great. It was better to use the Dark Flame ghostly chains to kill a portion of them first. After that, he used other methods, such as the 9 Underworld Sphere, to devour the remaining Soul Race experts and turn them into nutrients for his 8th ability. To Long Yu, who had faced 3 Soul Race sovereign armies head-on, he was practically invincible as long as a demigod Soul Race expert didn't appear. At the very least, he was invincible for a short period of time, as long as the barrier of his pure physique wasn't destroyed by the other party. However, given his current strength, even if an army of sovereigns attacked him at the same time, it would take them some time to break through his worldly purity body's protective barrier. These few hundred soul sovereigns were no match for him at all. In less than 15 minutes, Long Yu killed all the Soul Race sovereigns near the space-time teleportation formation. Not a single one was left alive. They were either completely annihilated by the Dark Flame, ghostly chains, or devoured by the 9 Underworld Sphere. Even their small worlds weren't left. Long Yu didn't mind. These Soul Race sovereigns weren't powerful existences. Their innate abilities didn't contain any divine character essence or absolute beginning essence, so there was no need to waste time searching for their small worlds. Right now, when the other party used their innate sacred art, if there was any divine rune essence or the power of the absolute beginning essence, Long Yu would be able to sense it. Therefore, he could definitely leave the stronger Soul Race behind and kill or devour the rest. Right now, Long Yu was still missing 3 shadow essences. It wasn't going to be that easy to get his hands on. After snatching the space-time transmission array, Long Yu removed the absolute space domain and then had the Void Spirit Dragon Blade activate the space-time transmission array. He was very clear that if he were to teleport over through the space-time transmission array, it was very likely that he would encounter the main force of the soul race. But he was not afraid. He couldn't just run into a soul race sovereign, could he? Moreover, even if it was a soul race sovereign, Long Yu might still be able to escape. Although he couldn't kill the soul race sovereign, it would be extremely difficult for them to kill Long Yu. As the power of space-time flickered, Long Yu's figure was sucked into the space-time teleportation formation. A moment later, he appeared extremely far away. This place wasn't far from the soul race's territory. In fact, it was already at the edge of the soul race's territory. It just so happened to be the soul race's last line of defense in this direction. Long Yu didn't wait for his figure to appear. He immediately turned into nothingness and didn't let any soul race sovereign sense his presence. However, the commotion caused by the space-time teleportation formation still made the soul race sovereign stationed here feel that something was wrong. They knew that something was coming, but they didn't see anything. This surprised them. Then, someone quickly went to check on the previous teleportation formation. However, they discovered that the area around the formation was completely empty. The 1,000 soul race sovereigns that should have been stationed here had completely disappeared. All that remained was the intense aura of battle. Someone had invaded. This news quickly spread to the soul race's territory. However, they didn't pay much attention to it. It wasn't like something like this hadn't happened before. There was no need to make a fuss about it. At the very least, there was no need to send a demigod to take action. From the way they saw it, if someone could easily kill 1,000 soul sovereigns without making any noise, then it must be an unknown enemy army that had arrived. However, they didn't sense anything. This surprised them. They connected this to the divine spirit boundary that they discovered recently. Could it be that the thing inside had launched a counterattack? However, they had clearly sent demigods and 3 sovereign armies to attack. There were also the Silverstone race and the Divine Water race. Logically speaking, there should be no news at all, right? No matter what, the war armies near the soul race's territory were all mobilized. They began to search for the foreign army that had seized the space-time teleportation formation. However, they didn't know that it wasn't a single army that had invaded their territory. It was just one person. This was all because none of Long Yu's battle outside the divine spirit boundary had reached the ears of the soul race. They had no idea what kind of existence was on the other side of the divine spirit boundary. When the soul race began to mobilize, Long Yu had already completely concealed himself and flew toward the interior of the soul race's territory. Even the spiritual senses of a demigod could not reach millions of kilometers away. Therefore, it was still very easy for Long Yu to avoid the demigods of the soul race by relying on the void spirit dragon dagger. He knew very well that there would definitely be powerful demigods stationed at the borders of the soul race's territory. He wasn't a match for them head-on, and it wasn't appropriate for him to escape. Of course, he could only choose to go around. He found a patrol squad of the soul race and killed all the other soul race members, leaving only one soul sovereign alive. Then, through the void nether dragon blade, he sent out a telepathic thought and interrogated the demigod on the borders of the soul race's territory. Faced with Long Yu's interrogation, these soul race members would rather die than surrender. However, after Long Yu cleaned up the 7th patrol squad, a spineless person finally told Long Yu the relevant information, allowing Long Yu to figure out the distribution of the demigods nearby. Chapter 16:10. Of course, Long Yu would not believe the first coward. He continued searching for the patrol squads of the soul race in the nearby area. Finally, when he cleared the 15th patrol squad, he encountered another coward who told him the distribution of the demigods in the nearby area under his interrogation. What puzzled Long Yu was that this guy's information was completely different from the previous guy's. Even the information about the number of demigods was different. This made Long Yu realize that these guys were not really cowards. They just wanted to deceive Long Yu and make Long Yu run into the demigods. Thankfully, he was smart enough to ask more questions. If he wanted to confirm it, he would have to interrogate some more soul race members. Long Yu was not in a hurry. After all, it would be very troublesome if he accidentally broke into the territory of the demigods. Therefore, he kept searching for the patrol squads at the edge of the Soul Race's territory and asked for information. Very soon, he realized that it was useless, faced with the interrogation of an alien race like him. Even if some Soul Race members revealed some information, the information revealed by each Soul Race member was different. They were obviously fooling him, and it was impossible for him to confirm it at all. In 3 days, he obtained 7 or 8 pieces of information, but all of them were different. These Soul Race members are really considerate of their race. Long Yu had to admit that their spirit really moved him. However, it was useless to move Long Yu. He still had to kill these Soul Race members. For the Soul Race, the human race, and the demon race, the two sides were enemies. After so many years, the number of people who had died in each other's hands was definitely in the billions. Such a blood feud was absolutely impossible to reconcile. Apart from the two sides continuing the war, there was another outcome, which was that one side would be completely destroyed by the other. Of course, the situation in the nearby space zone was still rather complicated. Even if one of the races was about to be destroyed, it was very likely that it would cause quite a big storm. Speaking of which, according to the records of the Demigod College, it has been more than 1,000 years since a race was destroyed in this area. Now that the combined strength of the human race and the demon race has increased a lot, I wonder if they will take action. Long Yu thought to himself. He decided not to inquire any further because it would be useless to do so in such a situation. No Soul Race clansman would tell him the truth. Only now did he understand why there was basically no communication between different races. Even if there was communication, the other party wouldn't tell you the truth. What was there to talk about? If he met them, he could only kill them. It was that simple. As for cooperation, it was very difficult to cooperate with a race like the Soul Race. Without a common enemy, the human race, the Yao race, and the Soul Race had nothing in common. There was no point in cooperating. With no other choice, Long Yu could only rely on his luck. Fortunately, although the Soul Race did not reveal any key information to him, he still managed to figure out where the borders of the Soul Race's territory were. Even if the guy was lying, he would have told Long Yu some wrong information about the demigod's location based on the border. Therefore, Long Yu finally understood the borders of the Soul Race's territory. As long as he crossed the border, he would be able to bypass the area guarded by the demigod experts and enter the Soul Race's territory safely. Speaking of which, I haven't even had a good time in the human race's territory or the demon race's territory. I didn't expect to come to the Soul Race's territory first. Long Yu found it funny. Next, he would search for the shadow essence in the Soul Race's territory, so he would definitely have to walk around. By then, he would probably be more familiar with the situation in the Soul Race's territory than the human race's and the demon race's territories. Although he was a member of the human race, he basically didn't stay in the human race's territory for long. Even in the demon race's territory, he only stayed a little longer in the outer galaxies and the battlefield of the alien races. He wasn't particularly familiar with the environment in the territory. With the void traversal of the Void Dragon Blade, Long Yu flew millions of kilometers in one go. It could be said that he had crossed the galaxy. Although it was fast, there were still some risks. If he happened to teleport to the demigod of the Soul Race, it would be a tragedy. Therefore, after every teleportation, Long Yu would subconsciously turn into nothingness and hide first. He would observe the surroundings clearly before continuing the operation. When he moved near the border of the Soul Race's territory, Long Yu blindly followed the demigods. But the situation was much better after he entered the Soul Race's territory. That was because the Soul Race's territory was extremely vast, and there were only about 20 demigods in the entire Soul Race's territory. At least half of them were guarding the border, and the other half were scattered in the vast universe. Obviously, it was not so easy for Long Yu to run into them. 2 days later, Long Yu was sure that he had teleported all the way to the interior of the Soul Race's territory, because he could see the stars getting closer and closer to him. The colors of the stars were relatively dim, very different from the situation in the human race and demon race's territory. The soul race was a special alien race that originated from this region and gradually developed. The cultivators of the soul race did not have a physical body. Every single one of them was a pure spiritual life form, and the types of divine symbols they could use were relatively few. In this region, there were basically sources of divine symbols condensed from the divine symbols of life or shadow attributes. According to the theories of the human race and the demon race, the sources of divine symbols were the failed products of the ancient gods' modification of the primeval power. Therefore, it could be inferred that in the soul race's territory, there should have been a powerful spirit-type god who modified the primeval power here, which was why there were so many sources of divine symbols of the spiritual attribute. Other than that, there were also the divine symbols of the shadow attribute, which were quite common in the soul race's territory. The divine symbols of the shadow attribute were one of the divine symbols that the soul race cultivators could rarely use apart from the divine symbols of the spirit attribute. Long Yu crossed the void and kept moving through the soul race's territory. He saw one cultivation planet after another, revolving around the sources of divine symbols. There were many soul race tribes on these cultivation planets, but Long Yu did not attack them. This was because these fellows were far too weak. If Long Yu attacked, he could likely shatter an entire planet. If the Dark Flame Ghost attacked, he could easily kill off all the soul race beings on the planet. But this was meaningless because his goal was to find shadow essence or wood attribute essence of the primeval power. Thus, there was no need for him to go to ordinary cultivation planets because it was impossible for such treasures to exist. As for the larger cultivation planets, there was no need for him to go either because there was a high chance that there would be demigods of the soul race there. His goal was the origin of divine runes. Whether it was shadow essence or wood attribute essence of the primeval power, they were all born from the source of divine symbols. Thus, the area around the source of divine symbols was the most likely place for Long Yu to obtain what he wanted. The guards around the source of divine symbols were usually very strict. For Long Yu, this was the best place to plunder and devour. If the Spiritas' powerhouses within the soul race's territory were gathered somewhere, then the majority of them would be near the source of divine symbols. They would either be comprehending the power of the source of divine symbols, or they would be sent to guard the source of divine symbols. Of course, these guards were basically there to prevent the Spiritas from entering. For instance, the source of divine runes in the monster race territory. Because the source of divine runes had a limited amount of strength, only those that had the qualifications to go to the source of divine runes could comprehend them. This required some relatively strong guards to guard the source of divine runes so that unrelated people couldn't enter. The Spiritas were also in the same situation. But today, they had welcomed a foreign powerhouse like Long Yu. This was something they had never imagined would happen. Soon, Long Yu found his first target. This was a relatively dim source of divine runes. There were 4 cultivation planets orbiting around it. It seemed like a decent source of divine runes. The Spiritas' powerhouses guarding it all had extraordinary auras. This was what Long Yu wanted to do. He quietly waited for 3 days. In these 3 days, he thoroughly understood the surrounding situation as well as the movements of the Spiritas. It just so happened that there was a group of Spiritas geniuses that had been chosen to come to this source of divine symbols to cultivate and comprehend the spirit attribute divine symbols. Although this was only the power of source divine symbols, to an ordinary cultivator, source divine symbols were already quite good. If one wanted to comprehend the power of the 5 elements, higher level revelation divine symbols, or even eternal divine symbols, it would be impossible to do so in such a place. Long Yu had obtained 3 source divine symbols from the eroding moon ancient region with great difficulty. He had given 1 to the humans, 1 to the monster race, and 1 to the Star River race. In the entire Spiritas territory, it was hard to say whether or not there were any source of revelation divine symbols. And even if there were, there would definitely be divine souls guarding them. It was impossible for Long Yu to have any ideas about such thing. After he investigated the surrounding situation, he began to act. After the younger generation of Spirita's geniuses entered, there were still many family elders and bodyguards waiting outside. These are all long-used targets. He wanted to see if there was any shadow essence among them. The former leader of the Demigod Academy, Frost, had obtained a lot of ice essence from the ice god race's territory. Now, Longyu had come to the Spirita's territory and was prepared to seize the shadow essence. 1,200 soul race guards. Among them, 100 are at least 5th phase great dominators. They are all captain-level existences. Right now, there are also the elders and bodyguards of the soul race clansmen escorting them. In total, there are 2,000 soul race clansmen gathered in this small area. After Longyu had investigated and made his preparations, he prepared to take action. Ancient Dragonbone Tower attack. Absolute space domain open. Another unstoppable slaughter was about to begin. As soon as Longyu appeared, he discovered that a 6th phase Sovereign Spiritas was using an innate divine ability. It seemed to be an existence that had fused with the essence of divine symbols. Chapter 16:11. The divine rune essence that Longyu needed was either shadow essence or absolute beginning essence. If it was only life essence, then it wouldn't be of much use to him. The energy that erupted from that special Spirita's 6th phase great ruler was the power of shadow essence. If this Spirita's was a 7th phase great ruler, then perhaps it would pose a slight threat to Longyu. But now, in front of Longyu, it didn't have the slightest ability to resist at all. The dark flame ghost chain instantly erupted. Black flames blazed around it as it rapidly extended through the void. It was like a long snake, wriggling and swallowing. All the Spirita's powerhouses in its path were incinerated, not even leaving a trace of their soul. It was just that under Longyu's deliberate control, the 6th phase Spirita's great ruler with the power of shadow essence was spared. Of course, this was only temporary. After Longyu killed off the other Spiritas, he used the boundless grasp to kill the 6th phase Spirita's great ruler. Then he took the 6th phase Spirita's great ruler's small world and left the divine rune source. Within the divine rune source, there were still many Spirita's juniors cultivating and comprehending. They had no idea that the Spirita's elders protecting them had all been killed. Moreover, Longyu didn't let a single Spiritas escape. In a short period of time, he had completely annihilated this large group of Spiritas. This could be said to be extremely efficient. After killing off this large group of Spiritas, Longyu left this place, not leaving behind a single trace of his aura. Even if a demigod powerhouse ran over afterwards, they wouldn't be able to find any information about Longyu. Longyu had the Dragon Blood Sacred Diagram, a combat weapon, which was a very useful tool for cleaning up traces. Although its grade was slightly low, the Dragon Blood Sacred Wind diagram was still very convenient to use. It could completely remove any traces of existence, and then make it impossible for the opponent to deduce any information about him. It was no wonder that even the Juyo Dragon Emperor kept this battle weapon. After all, it was very useful in many situations. After Longyu left the source of divine runes, he continued to fly. In 2 days, he crossed a distance of 1 trillion miles and arrived in a quiet and uninhabited void. In this void, there was no one within 1 trillion miles. Even if Longyu wanted to use the void to pass through this uninhabited region, he would need 2 days to do so. Now that he was here, he could peacefully search the small world of the 6th phase soul race ruler. However, searching for the essence of the divine characters in the opponent's pocket world was much faster. After all he needed to do was find the 7 innate magic fruits in the opponent's pocket world. Longyu quickly entered the opponent's pocket world. He immediately felt a strange shadow-type divine character surging toward him and surrounding him. However, these darkness-attributed divine characters were ownerless right now, so they posed no threat to Longyu. He directly passed through these darkness-attributed divine characters and quickly found the first connate mystique fruit. 3 days later, Long Yu appeared near another source of divine runes. Perhaps because of his last mission, he discovered that this source of divine runes was much more heavily guarded than before. Moreover, there were many hidden sentries. If Long Yu tried to attack like last time, he would definitely be discovered by the opponent, and his whereabouts would be exposed. This arrangement is a bit intricate. Long Yu's thoughts stirred. This source of divine runes was far too difficult to attack. If Long Yu wanted to forcefully seize this source of divine runes, it was likely that his whereabouts would be exposed. Of course, this was referring to Long Yu of the past. He had found a shadow essence from the sixth phase soul race ruler's body. Then, he had fused this shadow essence into the 9 Nether Hunters' innate magic fruit, causing the 9 Nether Hunters' innate magic fruit to have a special effect. That was, as long as the 9 Nether Hunter killed an opponent, it could transform the opponent's residual strength into another 9 Nether Hunter. For Long Yu's current situation, this was a completely divine skill. If the 9 Nether Hunter dealt with everything, then Long Yu wouldn't even need to show himself to kill all the Spiritas present. Even if the 9 Nether Hunter failed, Long Yu wouldn't be in danger of being exposed. In the Spiritas' territory, with this method, it could be said that he was unstoppable. Long Yu transformed into nothingness and hid in the void. Then, after investigating the situation, he condensed 10 9 Nether Hunters at once. These 10 9 Nether Hunters wielded twin sabers. They were like the shadows of a death god as they rapidly rushed towards the nearby Spiritas. Moreover, they used their heart saber to shatter the opponent's mind and soul. In nearly an instant, the 10 Spiritas were completely killed off. Long Yu hadn't used the 9 Nether Hunters' innate magic fruit recently, because it wasn't very useful. It was better to condense the Demon Dust avatar. However, after merging with the Shadow Essence, the 9 Nether Hunters' innate magic fruit was extremely suitable for combat under certain circumstances. For example, right now, it wasn't suitable for Long Yu to appear. So, using the 9 Nether Hunter could completely solve the situation he was currently facing. In just a breath's time, the 10 9 Nether Hunters had turned into 29 Nether Hunters. Then, these 29 Nether Hunters pounced towards the other Spiritas' sovereign mystic realm experts at lightning speed. Right now, Long Yu's cultivation was already at the 7th phase sovereign realm. He was already a peak existence below the demigod realm. Originally, the 9 Nether Hunters that he summoned could easily kill most existences below the demigod realm. Now that the Shadow Essence had been merged with the 9 Nether Hunters, not only did they have the ability to invade and divide, but the power of the twin sabers in their hands was even more tyrannical. Basically, as long as one wasn't at the peak of the 7th phase sovereign realm, there was no way for them to survive the 9 Nether Hunters' heart saber. The only exception was if the Spiritas' sovereigns were powerful enough to dodge the first attack. However, they wouldn't be able to dodge the second attack. Long Yu himself didn't even need to do anything. In just 4 or 5 breaths' time, the entire battlefield was filled with 9 Nether Hunters. There were at least 50 of them. This meant that 40 Spiritas' sovereigns had been killed by the 9 Nether Hunters and turned into 9 Nether Hunters instead. The Shadow Essence's power continued to condense into 9 Nether Hunters. 50, 60, 70, although 9 Nether Hunters were constantly being killed by the Spiritas experts, the number of 9 Nether Hunters on the battlefield was still increasing. Even the stronger Spiritas were being attacked by 3 or 4 9 Nether Hunters. They were easily killed and turned into a new 9 Nether Hunter. The entire sky was filled with the figures of the 9 Nether Hunters. This shocked the soul race cultivators. They had never seen a foreign race like the 9 Nether Hunter. Immediately, some of the soul race cultivators wanted to escape and report this news to the higher-ups of the soul race. Long Yu didn't stop them. In any case, the 9 Nether Hunters weren't his real body. Even if they were destroyed, it wouldn't be a problem. It was just that one of his innate abilities would be studied by the other party. It was impossible for them to capture the 9 Nether Hunters alive. This was because the 9 Nether Hunters didn't have any life. Even if they fell into the enemy's hands, they would immediately self-destruct. It was impossible to truly study the characteristics of the 9 Nether Hunters. When Long Yu first condensed the 9 Nether Hunters, he used the Dragon Blood Sacred Wind diagram to erase the connection between him and the 9 Nether Hunters. Even if the other party tried to deduce something based on the 9 Nether Hunters, they wouldn't be able to deduce anything about Long Yu. Long Yu even wanted to use this ability to massacre the cultivation planets of the Spiritas and deal a heavy blow to them. However, this idea wasn't realistic. After all, each 9 Nether Hunter wouldn't exist for more than 2 hours. Moreover, the strength of the opponents killed by the 9 Nether Hunters had nothing to do with Long Yu. Instead, it was related to the strength of the person killed. If the 9 Nether Hunter killed a 5th phase Great Sovereign of the Spiritas, then the new 9 Nether Hunter that was born would have the combat power of a 5th phase Great Sovereign. If it killed an Emperor Path Secret Realm Spiritas, then the new 9 Nether Hunter that was born would only have the combat power of an Emperor Path Secret Realm. Long Yu wanted to massacre some of the Spiritas' cultivation planets. Unfortunately, even he couldn't rely on the 9 Nether Hunters' splitting characteristic to slaughter all the Spiritas on an entire cultivation planet within 2 hours. Unless the 9 Nether Hunter that Long Yu condensed could exist for a longer period of time. In that case, it was still possible to massacre the entire cultivation planet. If the 9 Nether Hunter becomes a divinized ability, will it have such power? Long Yu thought to himself. Unfortunately, he didn't know how to turn a Sciention mystic ability into a deified mystic ability. Other than the eroding moon ancient region, he hadn't found any other way to achieve this. Although he couldn't massacre the cultivation planets for now, there were only 1,000 Spiritas in front of Long Yu. Just the 9 Nether Hunter alone was enough to deal with them. On the battlefield, the 9 Nether Hunter danced like a group of demons. The 2 blades pierced through the void, killing the Spiritas. Then, a new 9 Nether Hunter would appear from the spiritual and soul remains of the Spiritas. Such a hellish scene scared the remaining half of the soul race powerhouses out of their wits. The 9 Nether Hunter wasn't invincible, but their numbers kept increasing, and there was no end to them. As long as the Spiritas died, they would immediately become hunters of the netherworld. Such a situation caused the Spiritas present to be on the verge of collapse. During this process, Long Yu didn't sense any special innate ability of the Spiritas. In other words, during this operation, Long Yu didn't obtain any information about the essence of divine runes. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Looks like I have to look for my next target. Long Yu's eyes flashed with radiance as a new plan formed in his mind. Chapter 16:12. Long Yu's actions in the Soul Race's territory must have alarmed the upper echelons of the Soul Race. Just like when he was on a training mission in the Demigod Academy, once the human race or the demon race discovered traces of other races in their territory, they would definitely send experts to hunt them down. They wouldn't give the other races any chance to struggle at death's door. They wouldn't even let go of traces of those seemingly harmless foreign races. Not to mention that Long Yu had already caused severe damage to the Soul Race. In total, more than 3,000 Soul Race sovereigns had died in his hands. If the Soul Race didn't deal with such a matter seriously, then this race would have disappeared from this world long ago. It would have been impossible for them to maintain their development until now. Therefore, next, Long Yu would definitely face some genius experts of the Soul Race. Perhaps there was also an organization similar to the Demigod Academy in the Soul Race, or an existence similar to the Human Guard Corps. These organizations basically existed to fight against the other races. No matter how strong the invading foreign races were, they would eventually be killed by these organizations. Therefore, Long Yu's current situation was definitely very dangerous. But he wasn't worried about his own safety, because no matter which time it was, he hadn't revealed any clues about himself. Moreover, he didn't intend to use his main body for the next operation. After all, now that he had a great killing weapon like the 9 Nether Hunters, he couldn't risk revealing himself. 2 incidents had happened near the divine rune origin in a row, and the entire Soul Race's territory had been mobilized. If Long Yu continued to act, he would immediately be attacked by many experts who were already prepared. But Long Yu's plan would definitely leave the entire soul race scratching their heads, because before the next operation, he planned to take a stroll around other places. For example, he would casually scatter some 9 nether hunters on some nearby cultivation planets. For some ordinary cultivation planets, the hunters of the 9 nether that Long Yu had condensed out were akin to the god of death. No cultivator could fight against them. Additionally, the spirit soul cultivators killed by the hunters of the 9 nether would be transformed into hunters of the 9 nether. Long Yu was traveling among some training planets nearby. In the meantime, he saw a lot of powerful patrolling soul race squads, but none of them found any trace of him. After all, his technique of turning into nothingness was not a joke. Unless a demigod arrived, his traces would never be exposed. Then, every time he passed by a cultivation planet, he would drop 5 9 nether hunters and let them wreak havoc on the cultivation planet. If they didn't handle it well, these 5 netherworld hunters could sweep through the entire cultivation planet and kill the hundreds of millions of soul race people on the planet. Of course, most of them were soul race civilians who didn't have much combat power. But Long Yu believed that the soul race would not sit idly by. His purpose in doing this was to attract the attention of the soul race experts patrolling nearby to these cultivation planets, so as to minimize the resistance brought by his actions. Moreover, there was a great benefit to this. For Long Yu, his goal was to find the divine text essence or the absolute beginning essence. If he spread his net like this, he would be able to see the situation that the 9 nether hunters encountered. Once the divine text essence or the absolute beginning essence appeared nearby, he would be able to detect it immediately. Then, he would rush to the destination, kill the other party, and seize the divine text essence or the absolute beginning essence in the other party's small world. Just like this, Long Yu scattered the 9 nether hunters in the nearby soul race territory. This caused the people in the soul race's territory to be unable to make a living. Even though the cultivators of the soul race were spiritual life forms without a physical body, at this moment, an extremely dense aura of death could be felt everywhere in this star field. Some of the cultivation planets had not been able to deal with the 9 nether hunters properly, resulting in extremely heavy casualties. There was even a large number of 9 nether hunters gathered in most areas of a cultivation planet, and they continued to spread out to the periphery. Under such circumstances, there was only one way for the soul race to deal with it, and that was to let the stronger soul race cultivation teams come over and evacuate the other soul race members that were still alive. Then, they would set up a formation and eliminate the 9 nether hunters in one go. To be honest, Long Yu didn't know that the 9 nether hunters would be so strong after fusing with the shadow essence. Otherwise, he would have fused with the 9 nether hunters a long time ago. But it wasn't too late now. After all, even if the 9 nether hunters had fused with the shadow essence, he didn't have a good chance to use them. After 3 days, Long Yu had scattered the 9 nether hunters to dozens of nearby cultivation planets, causing a huge uproar in the soul race's territory. There were even 2 demigods of the soul race who came to the nearby sea of stars. Long Yu didn't encounter them himself, but the 9 nether hunters encountered the 2 demigod experts of the soul race and were directly blown to pieces without the slightest chance to resist. It was also when the 2 demigod experts of the soul race appeared that Long Yu finally discovered the second expert of the soul race who had fused with the divine text's essence. He was not near the 2 demigods of the soul race, which made Long Yu think of something. At this time, Long Yu was like a locust, spreading the 9 nether hunters to the nearby space of billions of kilometers. They served as his eyes and ears, allowing him to grasp the movements in the nearby space at any time. For the soul race, this was already an extremely serious alien invasion. Even in the past 100 years, something like this had never happened. This made the upper echelons of the soul race furious, and they swore to eliminate the culprit of this incident. Unfortunately, these soul race cultivators, even the 2 demigods, still didn't know who the culprit was. Countless 9 nether hunters were wreaking havoc in the void. When they encountered some weaker soul race members, they would directly kill them, and then split into more nine nether hunters. This situation made the soul race feel despair, and the soul race suffered extremely heavy losses. Before they knew it, Long Yu appeared near the great ruler of the soul race who had fused with the divine text's essence. After making sure that there was no danger in the surroundings, he personally attacked and killed it with the void grasp. This seventh phase great ruler of the soul race was very strong, and he reacted immediately, launching an invisible mental attack at Long Yu. Unfortunately, Long Yu's pure body made the other party's attack useless. Then his mind and soul were completely destroyed by Long Yu's dark demon divine text, leaving only a small world. Long Yu took away the small world, and then used the dragon blood sacred wind diagram to completely cover up the traces of his appearance. This series of actions made Long Yu feel a sense of familiarity. This feeling came from a long, long time ago, when the Geo Dragon Emperor roamed the territories of the Outer God race alone and plundered the creatures of the Outer God race. At that time, the Geo Dragon Emperor was already in existence in the demigod realm. One could imagine how terrifying the storm of slaughter he set off in the territories of the Outer God race was. To the Outer God race, the Geo Dragon Emperor could be said to be a nightmare. And now, Long Yu's actions in the Soul Race's territories would definitely leave a heavy mark in the history of the Soul Race. At least more than 50 cultivation planets were destroyed by the 9 Nether Hunters in this storm. The number of dead and injured Soul Race cultivators definitely exceeded billions. At this time, Long Yu also discovered that his innate mystiques were much stronger and more special than others. Even if other people's innate mystiques were fused with the primordium essence, they wouldn't have such terrifying power. They could even bring a huge disaster to the entire Soul Race. This included the Book of Shadows, the Path of the 9 Nether, and most importantly, the Ball of the 9 Nether. The innate mystique fruits in Long Yu's body seemed to be different from others. They were a level higher than other people's innate mystiques. As for the innate mystique fruits, it was said that this world gave every cultivator a gift. Everyone had 7 mystique seeds, which could bear 7 innate mystiques. No matter how one looked at it, Long Yu seemed to be very abnormal. Not only did he have the 8th mystique, but his 3 high-level mystiques, namely the 9 Nether Hunters, the Book of Shadows, and the Path of the 9 Nether, were too powerful. This made Long Yu wonder if it was because he wasn't born and raised in this world. After all, he had transmigrated from another world, so it was normal for him to have some special traits. He shook his head. Now was not the time to think about this. Even if he kept thinking, he wouldn't be able to get the answer now. At least, he had to wait until he reached the demigod level and touched the level of gods. Only then would he be able to get some answers about his transmigration and the innate mystique fruits. After killing the Soul Race member, Long Yu took away its small world and found a relatively safe place to search. Very soon, he found a life essence. This thing was useless to Long Yu, but if it was sent back to the Void Galaxy, it could greatly increase the strength of some cultivators who had comprehended the divine language of life. However, when Long Yu came out of the small world, he suddenly realized that his whereabouts seemed to have been exposed. From all directions, some powerful troops of the Soul Race surrounded him. Even the 2 demigods of the Soul Race were quickly teleporting in his direction. For now, the 2 demigods of the Soul Race were still relatively far away, but with the speed of demigods, they would soon catch up to Long Yu. *T. Without any hesitation, Long Yu cleaned up all traces in the field and started teleporting in a certain direction as fast as he could. Faced with demigods, there was only one way, and that was to run. If he was in the demigod level, there would be no need for him to run. He could easily kill the 2 demigods, but unfortunately, Long Yu was still a short distance away from the demigod level. Chapter 16:13. Long Yu did not know when he had been exposed, but it must have been one of the 2 demigods who had the means to track him. Whether it was through deduction, perception, or other weird methods, Long Yu was in danger. He had no choice but to leave the area as quickly as possible. Little Sue, as fast as you can, burst out. Long Yu commanded the Nether Dragon Dagger, and then flew across the void at a speed of millions of kilometers. However, even at such a speed, it seemed that he could not get rid of the two demigods of the soul race. The two demigods were still chasing after him, as if they could pinpoint his location. The fact that the soul race could survive in this space zone for such a long time proved that they were not easy to bully. How could the demigods not notice what Long Yu had done in the territory of the soul race? However, at this moment, the connection between Long Yu and the Void Ghost Dragon Dagger became even more compatible. After such a long time, this special absolute beginning treasure finally reached the third level of awakening. Awakening the first two levels of the Netherworld Dragon Blade had already increased its power by quite a bit. Now that it had awakened to the third level, the water elemental energy contained within the Netherworld Dragon Blade had increased by more than 3 times. The awakening skill this time was also a passive one. The effect was that the power of the water was 3 times more powerful. As a result, both Void Traversal and Void Burial were 3 times more powerful than before. In terms of Void Burial, the power was 3 times more powerful. As for Void Traversal, it was very useful for Long Yu's current situation. The distance of one teleportation was also 3 times more powerful, reaching more than 10 million kilometers. In the Void, 10 million kilometers was not a big deal. However, to be able to teleport more than 10 million kilometers in one breath was rather terrifying. Furthermore, when Long Yu awakened the Void Ghost Dragon Dagger to the 3rd level, he immediately got rid of the two demigods of the soul race. Little Sue, well done. Long Yu laughed and moved forward quickly in the void. In such a way, not only would he avoid the risk of being hunted by the demigods of the soul race, but he would also be able to stir trouble in the territory of the soul race and loot more things. However, at this moment, the 9 nether hunters that Long Yu had left behind in the void had all been eliminated. As a result, he had no idea what the situation in the void was like. He couldn't even tell if the two demigods were still chasing after him. This was not a good sign. This meant that he did not even know of the danger, and it was very likely that he would end up in tragedy if he was not careful. He constantly condensed some 9 nether hunters and let them scatter along the way. These 9 nether hunters did not receive the order to kill the soul race. Instead, they only served as scouts. This way, Long Yu would be able to know the general situation of the void he passed through after a period of time. Of course, this had its drawbacks. As long as the other party followed the 9 nether hunters, they would be able to find Long Yu's current location. But there was nothing he could do. After scattering enough 9 nether hunters along the way, Long Yu suddenly stopped this action. Then, he changed his direction and teleported in another direction. In such a way, the possibility that the other party could track him would be greatly reduced. 3 days later, Long Yu had arrived at a completely different galaxy. Even this galaxy was no longer under the jurisdiction of the two demigods of the soul race. However, he discovered that when he came to this galaxy, all the soul race cultivators in this galaxy were in an extremely nervous state. Long Yu immediately realized that the matter regarding the 9 nether hunters had spread throughout the entire territory of the soul race. Such a major event had basically destroyed dozens of cultivation planets. It was enough to attract the attention of the entire territory of the soul race. Furthermore, Long Yu was certain that many demigods in the territory of the soul race were searching for his traces. It was a pity that they could not find him for the time being. This is rather troublesome. Long Yu narrowed his eyes. If he took action now, it was possible that he would fall into the enemy's trap, and he would not be able to escape unscathed. If there were demigods lying in ambush in this galaxy, the situation would be very bad. For safety reasons, he did not take action immediately. Instead, he continued to teleport further away. At such a moment, he did not even dare to summon the 9 nether ball. Although it would slow down his consolidation of his level, it could not be helped. His life was the most important thing. However, as long as he was messing around in this territory of the soul race would not have the intention to attack the galaxy anymore. As for the Silverstone race and the Divine Water race, after losing a demigod and not receiving any specific information about the galaxy, they probably would not launch another operation easily. Therefore, Long Yu had plenty of time. Long Yu went deeper and deeper into the territory of the soul race. The closer he went to the center of the territory, the more he felt the overall strength of the soul race. Compared to the situation of the human race and the demon race, the soul race had too many large training planets in the territory of the soul race. Just like the King Killer planet in the Iron Wall galaxy, it was one of the 4 major training planets in the Iron Wall galaxy. But within the territory of the Spiritas, there were at least a dozen cultivation planets similar to the King Killer star in every galaxy. Moreover, there were also 1 or 2 super large cultivation planets. These cultivation planets were home to numerous cultivation geniuses and masters. Even if Long Yu were trapped in one of those training planets, it would not be easy for him to escape. As for the sources of divine symbols in the depths of the territory of the soul race, they were all very powerful and well-guarded. At least for Long Yu right now, he did not have the ability to rob those large sources of divine symbols yet. It's really hard to tell whether a race is strong or not from the edge of the territory. Only by going deep into the territory of a race can one see just how strong it is. Long Yu thought to himself, but he did not retreat. Instead, he continued to go deeper into the center of the territory of the soul race. The current situation was still not suitable for him to take action. The storm caused by the 9 Nether Hunters was far from over. If he took action now, he would undoubtedly be courting death. Even in the center of the territory of the soul race, he could see that there were patrols everywhere that were far more frequent than usual. Moreover, there were many places with hidden traps and arrays. If not for the fact that Long Yu had cultivated balance control and his spiritual sense was at least 10 times stronger than ordinary people, he would have already stepped into those traps. If one wanted to travel alone in the territory of a foreign race, one needed to have an all-round ability. It was not something that could be achieved with just pure combat strength. Even if Long Yu reached the demigod realm, it was impossible for him to fight the entire soul race alone. That was not realistic. Even if enough 7th phase sovereigns exploded around him at the same time, they could still pull him into a space-time storm. Even a demigod would find it difficult to escape unscathed in an extreme situation, not to mention that there were so many demigods in the soul race. Even if Long Yu was strong, it was impossible for him to fight so many demigods alone, not to mention that he was only a 7th phase sovereign. He was far from being able to fight demigod experts. It had been about a month since he entered the border of the soul race's territory. During this period of time, Long Yu was like a spectator, constantly roaming around the soul race's territory and observing the situation. Although he was nervous, compared to when he was in the eroding moon ancient region, he was still more relaxed. It was as if he was taking a stroll in his back garden, and he did not feel any pressure at all. About a month after he entered the soul race's territory, he felt that the time was almost right, and the next operation was once again put on the agenda. First, he had to choose a target location. In the depths of the soul race's territory, almost any cultivation planet could become a target. This was because Long Yu could feel the aura of the divine character's essence. In other words, on any cultivation planet, there were soul race cultivators who had fused with the divine character's essence. This was the extremely prosperous center of the soul race's territory. The cultivation planet here was extremely prosperous, and the requirements for Long Yu's operation were even higher. He could not afford to make any mistakes. Otherwise, not only would he fail to achieve his goal, he might even land himself in danger. Before the operation began, Long Yu took the initiative to activate his chess piece. It was the devil dust doppelganger that he had condensed before. It had always stayed in the galaxy far away from where he was, hidden extremely well, and had not been discovered by any soul race member. Although the distance was extremely far, Long Yu could still control the 2 devil dust doppelgangers and have them condense a large number of 9 Nether Hunters. Then, he had these 9 Nether Hunters scatter in all directions and land on the nearby cultivation planets to kill the soul race cultivators. Without a doubt, this was a plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. When the two devil dust doppelgangers that Long Yu had left behind took action, in less than a day, the surrounding soul race experts would definitely head toward the two distant places. They would even attract demigods, and many traps would be activated at the same time. And this was the time when Long Yu really took action. Among the humans and demons, there had never been anyone as bold as Long Yu, preparing to rob the cultivation planet at the center of the soul race's territory. But only Long Yu had the strength and wisdom to do so. After the two devil dust doppelgangers took action, Long Yu waited for half a day. Then, with lightning speed, he landed on the cultivation planet. I wonder how many divine characters' essence I can obtain on this cultivation planet. If everything goes well, we can go back after we finish this job. Long Yu thought in his heart. With him as the center, countless 9 nether hunters spread out in all directions of the cultivation planet. Chapter 16:14. The cultivation planet that Long Yu had descended on was filled with lush greenery. All sorts of strange trees grew on the surface of the entire cultivation planet. Each of these plants was extremely large. They were even larger than the towering trees on the planets in the human race and demon race's territories. Each of these giant trees was hundreds of miles tall. Their canopies extended for thousands of miles, enveloping a large continent. There were also many natural creatures on the surface of such a cultivation planet. However, they were mostly insects. There were no beasts or birds. Existences like insects formed a part of the entire cultivation planet's ecosystem. As for the soul race, they were like foreign creatures. They had no physical bodies, but they did not need to eat. They only needed to absorb the heaven-earth spiritual energy produced by the planet to survive. If he were to rely on his naked eye, Long Yu wouldn't be able to see any cultivators on the planet. However, if he released his spiritual sense, he would discover that there were countless soul race cultivators on the cultivation planet. Even in the ocean, nearly 109 nether hunters were divided into 100 batches. They surged out in all directions of the planet. They killed any soul race cultivators they saw as quickly as possible. The place that Long Yu chose was the most prosperous place on the entire cultivation planet. There were the most soul race experts in such a prosperous place. However, it was also the most densely packed. It was the easiest place to increase the number of 9 nether hunters. If they encountered any troublesome opponents, Long Yu would personally deal with them. In any case, he decided that this was the last time. He would run after killing them. He didn't need to worry about exposing his true form. In the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the entire cultivation planet was filled with hundreds of thousands of 9 nether hunters. They were like a raging wave that spread into the distance. During this period of time, Long Yu also discovered 2 soul race experts. They were both 7th phase great rulers. They should be the strongest group of people on this cultivation planet. Normally, they could be said to be the strongest experts on the entire cultivation planet. They guarded this cultivation planet and possessed the most abundant resources on this cultivation planet. It was just that it was unknown whether the soul race was formed by a family or some other basic organization. These 2 powerhouses were equivalent to the patriarchs of the human cultivation planets. Now that they had encountered such a situation, they had to personally appear. Unfortunately, they were targeted by Long Yu as soon as they appeared. The reason why they were stronger than the other soul race members was because their innate divine ability fruits contained a certain amount of divine text essence. This was truly worthy of being a super cultivation planet at the center of Spirita's territory. Long Yu had only just begun, and he had already discovered these 2 powerhouses. It was similar to Master by Yun from the White Cloud Galaxy that Long Yu had met before. He was probably not far away from the demigod level, except that he didn't have the opportunity to make further progress. Long Yu had killed people like that many times in the eroding Moon Ancient domain. These two powerful 7th phase soul ray sovereigns were probably quite old, so they gave the opportunity to the younger generation and didn't participate in the eroding moon ancient domains operation. Unfortunately, they were like shrimps in front of Long Yu, unable to put up any resistance. When Long Yu was a 5th phase sovereign, he could rely on his intelligence and the like to kill those peak 7th phase sovereigns time and time again in the eroding moon ancient domain. Now that he was a peak 7th phase sovereign, there was no need to even mention him. Unless it was a super expert on the same level as the golden 6-winged expert from before, they wouldn't be a match for him at all. Dark Flame Ghost. Long Yu raised his hand, and the Dark Flame Ghost, a high-grade modified divine source artifact, suddenly shot out. It brought with it endless black flames as it shot forward, directly engulfing one of the powerful 7th phase soul ray sovereigns. However, in the next moment, Long Yu directly withdrew the Dark Flame Ghost. The Dark Flame Ghost's black flames had only burned the opponent's mind and soul into nothingness, but it still left behind the opponent's small world. Long Yu stepped forward, flipped his hand, and put the small world into his pouch. He didn't have the time to search the remains of the small world for now. In any case, he was sure that there was at least one shadow essence inside, and he just had to kill another one to collect it. Long Yu didn't hesitate at all. He raised his hand and used the Boundless Grasp, blasting it towards the other 7th phase soul ray sovereigns. The terrifying Forest Devil Divine characters directly shattered the opponent's mind and soul, and the remains of the small world fell into Long Yu's hands. Even if these peak existences were 7th phase great rulers, they were not Long Yu's match. This was because his current strength had already surpassed that of ordinary sovereigns. Just by relying on the Jade branding mark, Long Yu was able to reduce the density of power within these sovereigns' bodies by half. This made the opponent's power like cotton compared to Long Yu, and it was impossible for them to stop Long Yu. Soul race experts continuously appeared, hunting down the 9 underworld hunters that Long Yu had summoned. Unfortunately, the number of 9 underworld hunters on the cultivation planet continued to increase until it became completely unstoppable. Finally, reinforcements from other cultivation planets surged out from the space-time teleportation arrays, constructing one formation after another, and began to eliminate the 9 underworld hunters in large numbers. However, at this time, Long Yu had already taken the small worlds of the 2 7th phase soul ray sovereigns and left the cultivation planet. In the entire cultivation planet, these 2 7th phase soul ray sovereigns were the strongest. Now that Long Yu had obtained these 2 small worlds, there was no need for him to kill the other soul ray sovereigns. After all, it was simply too dangerous to stay. Before he left, he activated the Dragon Blood Sacred Wind diagram and completely erased all traces of his existence. Then, he activated the Void Underworld Dragon Blade and rapidly approached the borders of the Soul Race's territory. At this time, Long Yu did not choose the direction of the Void Galaxy, but the direction of the Demon Race's territory. He did not head towards the Void Galaxy, because if he was being followed, he might bring disaster to the Void Galaxy. After all, the overall strength of the Void Galaxy was still lacking, and it could not withstand a large-scale attack from the Soul Race. However, the Demon Race was different. In any case, the war between the Soul Race and the Demon Race had existed for a long time, so there was nothing wrong with Long Yu drawing the hatred onto the Demon Race. With the Void Underworld Dragon Blade's current speed, it would take Long Yu only about a month to cross half of the Soul Race's territory. This speed was already very terrifying. He hid in the void, constantly teleporting, and through the chaos of the Soul Race to the back of his mind. Right now, he did not have the time to think about the situation in the Soul Race's territory. This was because he would not leave any clues for them. All he needed to do was to keep running. Moreover, his escape route was very strange, and he would not give the Soul Race any chance to catch up. Coupled with his terrifying speed, it was even more impossible for the Soul Race to catch up. Of course, it was possible that some demigods of the Soul Race had some secret methods that could detect his existence, but he was not particularly scared right now. After all, He did not need to rob anything anymore. If he only needed to run, he was confident that he could break through even if there was a demigod right in front of him. Along the way, he began to search the remains of the two small worlds, and what he found shocked him. What a bountiful harvest! Longyu did not expect that he had made a fortune this time. From the remains of the two soul race demigods, he had obtained 2 pieces of wood elemental essence, 4 pieces of shadow essence, and 2 pieces of life essence. There were 8 pieces of divine text essence and elemental essence in total. This was the first time that Longyu had obtained so many existences, and it did not seem particularly difficult to obtain them. It was just that the other party was hiding in the center of the soul race's territory, which was why it seemed more dangerous. In terms of strength, the 2 soul race demigods were not enough for Longyu to pay attention to at all. Longyu pondered for a moment. It seemed like he didn't need the shadow essence anymore. Of the remaining 2 sacred abilities, one was the Soul Seal Siphon, and the other was the 9 Underworld Dragon Breath. It seemed like it would be better if he fused the Wood Origin Essence. If the Wood Elemental Essence was fused into one of Red Oriole's innate techniques, it would give her blood-colored whip the ability to destroy the mind and soul. What if it was fused into Dragon Breath of the 9 Nether? This was a divinized technique that had been fused with the Wood Elemental Essence. If it could attack the mind and soul directly, the damage would be extremely terrifying, because Dragon Breath of the 9 Nether was a pure attack technique in the first place. As for Soul Seal Siphon, it was a restriction technique. The Wood Elemental Essence might be able to give it the effect of trapping the opponent's mind and soul. But in any case, Longyu did not have the time to experiment right now. Even if he experimented in the void, it was possible that he would give himself away, and any clues right now could lead to his whereabouts being captured by the demigods of the soul race. A demigod of the soul race was not very scary to Longyu. He could escape anyway. He was not particularly scared of 2 demigods of the soul race, either. However, if more than 3 demigods of the soul race attacked him together, then he would definitely be killed. He could only deal with demigod experts right now, not to mention the powerful demigods guarding the central area of the soul race's territory. The demigods that could catch up to him were basically existences close to the peak of the demigod level. The density of their power was definitely more than 10 times that of regular cultivators. It was even possible that it could reach 20 times. It was really unwise for Longyu to waste time here. As for testing the effect of the technique, he could wait until he left the soul race's territory. When he reached the demon territory, his safety would be somewhat guaranteed. At the very least, there were many demigod experts in the human race and the demon race right now. The soul race did not have the guts to attack the demon race recklessly. Chapter 16:15. Longyu moved quickly toward the demon race's territory, covering thousands of kilometers in a flash. Behind him, the entire soul race's territory was already in chaos. Although he was alone, he had caused tremendous damage to the soul race's territory with a hunter of Tartarus. It could be said that ever since the soul race had developed, something like this had never happened. A foreign race had actually invaded the core of their territory and caused such great damage. For Longyu, he did not feel that he had done anything great. After all, the alien races were hostile. It did not matter how many he killed. It would be best if he could clean up the soul race so that the demon race and the human race would have more territory and develop faster. At the very least, their overall strength would be much stronger. Right now, the human race had a lot more top warriors than before, but their overall strength had not changed much. It was still difficult for the 2 races to rise completely with just a few more demigods. In the entire soul race's territory, the demigods had basically taken action. Even the arrogant demigods of the soul race had taken action in anger. However, it was not so easy for them to find Longyu. How vast was the soul race's territory? Longyu alone couldn't even be considered as a speck of dust in this territory. If the other party wanted to find him, the only way was through divination. However, Long Yu had used the dragon blood saintly wind diagram to erase all information about him. Even if the other party wanted to make a divination, they wouldn't be able to, unless the soul race among the enemy's demigods had grasped a bit of the power of time. They might be able to trace the traces left by Long Yu with the power of time. That was the only possibility for them, to trace Long Yu. In the vast soul race's territory, there were as many as 20 demigods. Even inside the territory, there were at least 10. Among so many demigods, there were indeed one or two who had a deeper understanding of the power of time. They did not need to use the power of time, because they could not control time on their own. However, one of the demigods of the soul race had a keen sense of time and could detect the aura left behind in a certain place. It was exactly this ability that allowed the demigod of the soul race to deduce Long Yu's approximate location. Although Long Yu mostly used the Nine Nether Hunter, there was no doubt that he would leave behind a corresponding aura when he condensed the Nine Nether Hunter. So, it was not too difficult to track him based on this. Once Long Yu's location was confirmed, the next step would be much easier. The territory of the Soul Clan was naturally similar to that of the Human Clan and Demon Clan. It was filled with the existence of space-time teleportation arrays. If one wanted to surround Long Yu, they only needed to use the space-time teleportation arrays and rush towards Long Yu's location. However, Long Yu's speed was simply too fast. Even in the territory of the Soul Race, it was still an extremely difficult task to completely surround Long Yu. Therefore, for this operation, the Soul Race had sent a total of 6 demigods. At first, the 2 demigods were unable to catch up to Long Yu, but now, the 6 demigods of the Soul Race had attacked together, vowing to surround Long Yu in a small space and kill him. Based on the direction that Long Yu was heading, the demigods of the Soul Race had even sent their subordinates to set up some traps in the void of space ahead of him. Once Long Yu fell into those traps, he would be completely trapped. Although it was not impossible for him to escape, it would definitely be able to trap him until the 6 demigods arrived. Long Yu did not know any of this. However, he did not move forward in a straight line foolishly. Instead, he moved forward in a zigzag pattern. The direction of his teleportation was not a straight line, but an irregular one. There was no pattern to his movement at all. In this way, even if the Soul Race could learn his location, it would not be so easy for them to surround and intercept him in advance. However, 10 days later, Long Yu discovered that the environment around him seemed to be a little strange. From front, back, left, right, up, and down, there were a total of 6 directions, and each of them had a powerful aura that was approaching where he was. Moreover, he discovered that the void nearby had been sealed. Is it a demigod? Also, they've completely sealed the space nearby, making it impossible for Little Void to teleport me out. Long Yu frowned slightly. If it weren't for the fact that he still had some tricks up his sleeves, it was very likely that he would have been surrounded and killed by the other party. It could be seen that the other party had definitely prepared this formation for a very long time to be able to accurately trap him in this void. Unfortunately, the demigods of the Soul Race were still wrong about one thing. Long Yu had a lot of tricks up his sleeves. Path of 9 Ghosts. Long Yu activated his 7th innate technique. Immediately, a pitch-black beam of light shot out and swept through the void, shattering the spatial seal in front of him and completely disintegrating the spatial divine symbols contained in it. It's a pity that this spatial seal is not a demigod's trick. Otherwise, it could have trapped me for a little longer. As for now, goodbye. The corners of Long Yu's mouth curled. The void nether dragon dagger flashed away with him, and his entire body disappeared from this area. He appeared in a place that was originally 10 million kilometers away. This scene shocked the 6 demigods of the Soul Race who had begun to surround and attack him. This trap was something that they had painstakingly designed in the past 10 days, but they did not expect that this human brat would break it so easily. The problem was in one of the conditions, and that was the spatial seal. The 6 demigods did not know that Long Yu actually had a way to break through the spatial seal. Also, it was such an easy way. This time, Long Yu slipped away from their encirclement. It would not be so easy for them to catch up to Long Yu again. More importantly, Long Yu's teleportation speed was too fast, so fast that the 6 demigods could not catch up with him directly. The Void Nether Dragon Dagger was a special, primordial divine grade. There were few weapons of such a level in the entire territory of the Soul Race, not to mention that it happened to be a speed type. If Long Yu could awaken the Void Nether Dragon Dagger to a higher level, his speed would obviously be even faster. Also, some special awakening skills would be derived, which could significantly improve Long Yu's comprehensive combat ability. Different from advanced source items, such as the Dark Flame Ghost Chain, the Dark Flame Ghost Chain could only be used to kill enemies and had no other uses. The Void Nether Dragon Dagger was different. After rushing out of the encirclement, Long Yu did not stop at all. He continuously traveled through the void and quickly left the location of the previous trap. Even if the demigods of the Soul Race could lock onto his location, it would not be possible to set up such a trap again in a short period of time. During this period of time, Long Yu happened to be able to accumulate his strength. For this trip to the Soul Race's territory, he had prepared a lot of recovery pills. Only at this moment did they come in handy. In his small world, he often prepared 5 Devil Dust clones. These 5 Devil Dust clones were completely condensed by Long Yu to break the opponent's spatial seal. After all, if there was a next time, the opponent's spatial seal would definitely be set up by the demigods themselves. If that was the case, it would not be so easy for Long Yu to break the spatial seal. He had to make preparations in advance. In just 12 days after Long Yu left the first trap area, that feeling of danger descended again, and he once again broke into a spatial seal area. Just as he had expected, this spatial seal area had already been set up by the demigods of the Soul Race. It would definitely not allow him to slip away as easily as before. Unfortunately, Long Yu was already prepared for this. 5 Devil Dust clones appeared, each using the path of the 9 underworlds towards the spatial seal area. Combined with the effect of the Jade branding mark and the simultaneous attacks of the 5 Devil Dust clones, the spatial seal in that area immediately began to collapse. Although the speed of collapse was not particularly fast, it was enough for Long Yu to escape from this space. The demigods of the Soul Race, who were attacking from 6 directions, were almost going crazy. They did not expect that this human brat could even break the spatial seal set up by the demigods. One of the demigods of the Soul Race felt that the power of the spatial seal that it had set up was suddenly reduced by half. It was exactly because of this that the human brat was able to gradually disintegrate its power. Before the 6 demigods of the Soul Race reached Long Yu slipped away from under their noses again. And this time, it was very likely to be the last chance for the Soul Race to besiege Long Yu. In a few days, Long Yu would be able to leave the territory of the Soul Race and go to the territory of the demons. Once Long Yu completely left the territory of the Soul Race and went to the battlefield of the alien races, it would be inconvenient for the 6 demigods of the Soul Race to chase after him. Because once the 6 demigods of the Soul Race chased after him, it was very likely that the other races would take action. Just the confirmation that the 6 demigods of the Soul Race were outside was very likely to cause the nearby Divine Water Race, Ice Race, and so on to attack the territory of the Soul Race. They had to consider the situation. Therefore, their last chance was to stop Long Yu before he left the territory of the Soul Race. Fortunately, there were some arrays on the border of the Soul Race's territory all year round. These arrays were completely activated at this moment. Usually, these arrays were used to block enemies from the outside, but now they were used to block enemies from the territory from escaping. The Soul Race had never been as embarrassed as this time. As a result, the 6 demigods of the Soul Race hated Long Yu to the extreme. If they did not eliminate him, it would definitely be the greatest humiliation in the history of the Soul Race. When did the declining human race become so arrogant and despotic in the Soul Race's territory? Chapter 16:16. Long Yu soon approached the border of the Soul Race's territory. He knew very well that the closer he got to this moment, the more dangerous it would be. If he was not careful, he might be caught by the demigods of the soul race, and the consequences would be obvious. If there were only one or two demigods of the soul race, he could still find a way to escape from them. However, there were 6 demigods of the soul race attacking together, so there was nothing he could do. If Long Yu was surrounded by them, he would probably be killed in less than 3 seconds. Of course, they might not necessarily kill him, but the consequences would probably be worse than being killed. How do I escape from the soul race's territory? Long Yu knew that this was a difficult question, but no matter how difficult it was, he had to try, or he would be dead in the end. Fortunately, even the demigods of the soul race could not tell the difference between his real body and the devil dust clones. Even the power of deduction would lose its accuracy when there were devil dust clones around. This was Long Yu's last resort. If he was seen through and stopped by the demigods, then there was really nothing he could do. 10 demon dust doppelgangers appeared from his body. The reason why he had saved this move for the very end was because the demon dust doppelgangers consumed too much of his energy. If he had used this move in the Spirita's territory, it was likely that he would have used up all of his pills before he even reached the border. So this was the key. The devil dust clones flew out when they approached the border of the soul race's territory. The Void Spear Dragonblade had left the devil dust clones with the grand beginning power of the water, which could allow these devil dust clones to travel through the void more than 10 times in a row. This was what the Void Spirit Dragonblade and Long Yu had been planning for a long time, and now it was finally going to be implemented. When Long Yu's plan was carried out, the 6 demigods of the soul race and the other experts of the soul race were all dumbfounded. The 11 human kids scattered in different directions. Which one was the real one? Even the demigod of the soul race, who had a keen sense of time, could not deduce the existence of Long Yu's true body with his own power. The 10 devil dust clones of Long Yu and his true body, however, did not show any difference. They simply dispersed in all directions. The 11 Long Yus quickly approached the border of the soul race's territory and triggered the warning array. 9 Nether Path. Long Yu and the 10 devil dust clones used the 9 underworld paths techniques at the same time. Because they were devil dust clones, even the innate divine abilities they used were exactly the same. There was no difference between them. At this critical moment, the 6 demigods of the soul race could only try their luck. After all, they had 6 demigods. If they separated to stop Long Yu, there was a 50% chance that they could stop the boy's true body. Each of Long Yu's devil dust clones was at least 100 million kilometers away from each other, which was the distance of 10 times of teleportation. If they were all connected to each other, it would be like a spider web. The 6 demigods of the soul race each found one of them and quickly charged at them. Coincidentally, Long Yu's true body was targeted by one of the demigods of the soul race. However, this demigod was not very strong. Its power density was about 13 times that of a regular cultivator, unlike the other 5 demigods of the soul race, whose power density was more than 15 times. I can resist this one demigod, but I'll have to use methods like the Dark Flame Ghost Chains. Once I use the Dark Flame Ghost Chains, my true body will be exposed, and the other demigods of the soul race will come after me. Long Yu's head was extremely calm. He did not panic at all. Instead, he was considering countless possibilities in his head. Thankfully, these demigods are all soul race, which makes it easier to defend. Thinking to himself, Long Yu gave up the idea of resistance in the end. It was impossible to counterattack and kill the other party. In fact, it was impossible to even buy time. All he could do now was resist the other party's attacks head-on and destroy the spatial seal at the border of the soul race's territory in this period of time. The power of the space blockade surrounded the entire border of the soul race. Once it was opened, even demigod experts could not pass through easily, not to mention Long Yu. Fortunately, Long Yu had the innate ability of the Path of 9 Nether, and he could still slowly dismantle this layer of space blockade. The 10 devil dust clones of Long Yu, together with his true body, were all activating the Path of 9 Nether with all their strength. The dark light disintegrated this layer of space blockade as quickly as possible, and the attacks of the 6 demigods of the soul race also arrived at this moment. Waves of terrifying mental attacks landed on Long Yu and the other 5 Devil Dust clones. However, the silver radiance of the world-purifying body appeared on the surface of the clones, blocking the majority of the attacks. The attacks that the 5 Devil Dust clones encountered were much stronger than what Long Yu was facing. Basically, they only lasted for 3 seconds before the defense of the body of Pure World was announced to be broken and completely shattered. Just like that, a part of the mental power in the Devil Dust clones was completely destroyed. The connection between Long Yu and the 5 Devil Dust clones was also announced to be cut off, and he could no longer control the 5 Devil Dust clones to do anything else. It was to the extent that the 5 Demon Dust clones would soon completely collapse due to losing their mental connection with Long Yu. The demigod of the soul race that attacked Long Yu was slightly weaker, so it allowed Long Yu to resist for a relatively long time. Moreover, when the opponent launched another attack, Long Yu activated the method of the world-cleansing soul mirror and directly reflected part of the opponent's power back 10 times. Although the world-cleansing soul mirror could not completely reflect the power of a demigod expert, this move still shocked the demigod of the soul race. He immediately took defensive measures and blocked the mental attack that was reflected back by Long Yu. It was also at this moment that Long Yu finally made a gap in the space blockade in front of him. Even though it was just a gap, it was enough for Long Yu. "Little Sue, let's go." Long Yu summoned the Void Soul Dragon Dagger. The next moment, a surging power of the water element emerged from where he was. Then, he teleported to the outside world and finally broke through the blockade of the entire border of the soul race's territory. As long as there was a gap, Long Yu could turn into nothingness and pass through it, and then be teleported away by the void. Only by combining all kinds of methods could Long Yu successfully escape from the soul race's territory and successfully achieve his goal this time. However, compared to the 8 divine language essences and the essence of the absolute beginning that he obtained this time, the trouble he caused was really a bit too big. If the demigods of the soul race knew that Long Yu originally only wanted to rob the 3 shadow essences, they would almost cry. They would have been better off just giving them to Long Yu. At the very least, their losses would not be so great. It must be noted that what Long Yu caused, at least 10 billion individuals of the soul race had died. Countless cultivation planets had even become ghost towns because of this, without the existence of any soul race cultivators. How could a cultivation planet that had been ravaged by the hunters of Tartarus be described as miserable? Of course, if Long Yu had directly asked the soul race for the shadow essences in the beginning, the other party would have definitely thought that he was crazy and had something wrong with his head. In any case, Long Yu finally escaped, and after he escaped, he directly teleported to an extremely faraway place, deep into the battlefield of the alien race. If the 6 demigods of the soul race still pursued him, it was very likely that he would be discovered by other races, and it would bring certain danger to the soul race's territory. The 6 demigods of the soul race could see this very clearly. However, they were really unwilling to watch Long Yu escape just like that. Finally, after some discussion, they decided that the 2 strongest demigods of the soul race would attack and continue to pursue Long Yu in the battlefield of the alien race. These 2 demigods of the soul race had both reached a power density of 18 times. They could be counted as the strongest among the demigods of the soul race. In a head-on confrontation, Long Yu would probably be completely blown into smithereens in 2 breaths. Moreover, one of the 2 demigods of the soul race was the existence that had a keen perception of the power of time, and it could accurately sense Long Yu's location. Right now, Long Yu was completely exhausted, and when he was fleeing, he had basically used up all the pills on him. It was already impossible to use the Devil Dust clone to distract their attention. Fortunately, I've already reached the battlefield of the alien race. That was what Long Yu was thinking, but it was also at this moment that he actually sensed waves of intense energy coming from the void nearby. Some of the energy waves even gave him a familiar feeling. He didn't think too much and quickly passed through the starry sky. However, not long after, when the two demigods of the soul race caught up, the starry sky suddenly changed. In the void, there were actually several experts in the demigod level, and they were from the human race and the demon race. Long Yu even knew many of them. Red, Oriole, Moonsong, you've also become demigods, but why are you here? Long Yu turned around and saw the familiar figures of the two women. He was immediately stunned. This was almost an unexpected reinforcement. Apart from Moonsong and Red Oriole, there were 3 other demigods in the field. There were 5 demigods in total. Although many of them were new demigods, the outcome of the battle against the 2 demigods of the soul race was still very easy to determine. We estimated that you were about to escape from the demon race, so we waited here for a while. We didn't expect to see you. There are other people nearby, and they're all on their way. This time, we're going to heavily injure the soul race. The demigod of the heavenly bat demon race that Long Yu was very familiar with, Gaudi, flashed past like a phantom and appeared between the 2 demigods of the soul race. The terrifying power of the revelation level burst out at this moment. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.